Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Bat Around. I'm your host, Paul Valley. With me today from Pigtown Sports, he is Zach Moore, former Orioles and Marlins farmhand. Zach, good morning. Thanks
Morning,
for
Paul. How you
joining me
doing?
today. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. You able to hear me? Yeah, I can hear you.
But we're going to power through this thing. Take a call today. I'll brought you by Royal back in session, and it is time for a roll call. A chicken roll call, that is. Right now at Royal Farms, you can get 9 chicken rolls for just $10. In addition to 10-piece dark Rofo chicken meals, just $15. You can get 2 hot, good-to-go sandwiches for just $6. So get to your neighborhood Rofo today to find out why they were voted number 1 in the USA Today Reader's Choice poll for best gas station food. All right, Zach, really pumped to have you on the show today. The Orioles have been very active, even if it's not in the free agent market yet. They've been doing a lot of things since the season ended. We'll do a little bit of housekeeping here. Anthony Santander and Corbin Burns, they both declined the qualifying offers. That's a big duh. We knew that was going to happen. So they are free agents. Whoever they sign with, if it's not the Orioles will get the top draft pick that isn't the first pick in the first round for that team, if that makes sense. So let's say that the White Sox go with the 17th pick. They sign Anthony Santander to play right field for them. They wouldn't give up their 17th pick. They give up their next highest pick after that. So that's the same case for Santander and for Corbin Burns. Former Oriole Austin Hayes has been informed by the Philadelphia Phillies that he will be non-tendered, making him a free agent. Zach, this is a guy who the GM of the Phillies tried to get. It was reported 3 years in a row that he tried to get Austin Hayes. He finally got him. Austin Hayes, I think he had was it a kidney or a liver infection that he got a kidney infection after joining the Phillies. Didn't have a great run with them after not a great run with the Orioles this season. A year removed from being a starting all-star outfielder and a Gold Glove finalist. He's now in the free agent market looking for a job. You posted yesterday, Zach, that you think that he'll land on his feet somewhere. Austin Hayes, what's your feelings about where his career is going to go from here?
I mean, this is a big year for him. I mean, obviously, with him struggling to stay healthy pretty much his entire career and then having a bad last year, I mean, you know what you're getting out of Austin Hayes. He's a 250, 260 type hitter. He's going to give you 150% every single play. And that plays into why he's hurt so much, I feel like, because he runs into the walls. He lays out for balls. Like, he's always hustling. The hamstrings can't keep up. He's had a lot of bad luck in his career. I see him probably going out. So we'll put the Padres out there. The Padres can't re-sign Profar. Why wouldn't you take a flyer on Austin Hayes? Like, that's the same kind of defender, maybe a little bit better. You put him next to Jackson Merrill. You've got a great two outfielders right there. Plus Tatis is also a great outfielder. I could see Arizona making a play for it too. They're losing Grichuk a little bit. There's teams out there that obviously need his help. Pittsburgh needs help with the hitting department. He'll land somewhere in the big leagues. He'll probably maybe get a minor league contract to start. He'll earn a job out of spring training, but I see him in the big leagues this year.
Oh, I think that there's a lot of teams that could use the services of Austin Hayes, that's for sure. And what I would love to see from Austin Hayes, Zach, is one season just fully healthy.
Yeah.
Just fully healthy, where he's not dealing with a hand issue or a leg issue. Like, he's played 140, 150 games multiple times for the Orioles, but you could kind of tell it was a half of a season each year. It was the first half in 2022. It was, and in 2023 for that matter, where he really came on, and then the second half just fell off a cliff. One full season where he stays healthy, he gives you 145, 150 games, and I would love to see the numbers he put up. I remember Jeffrey Hammonds back in the day. He was a top Orioles prospect who just couldn't stay healthy. He goes out to Colorado, one healthy season. He hits well over 300. He makes an all-star team. And you kind of saw like why he was a top prospect. And the 1 year he stayed healthy, he proved it. And I think that Austin Hayes is of a similar ilk, where if he gets the one season, he can go out there, he can hit 260, he can hit 25 home runs, and you play Gold Glove defense. And I really like the player, but this is a league where it's what have you done for me recently? And for the Orioles, he just was not performing. They had to make a move to get bullpen help. The Phillies loved Hayes, and now he finds himself looking for a new job. I agree with you. He'll find a job somewhere, land on his feet, and hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah, he almost kind of reminds you a little bit of Nolan Reimold. It's another guy that we wish would have just stayed healthy, just to see what could have been.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Nolan Reimold was another guy. He still, for my money, has one of the loudest home runs I've ever heard. He had a walk-off home run against Cleveland back in 2016, and that you could hear that ball probably 3 blocks from the stadium the way it came off the bat.
Ball came off his bat a little different compared to everybody else.
Yeah, he just hit it so hard, man. He was a fun player when he was healthy.
Watching him hit is like watching Gunnar Henderson hit compared to everybody else. It's just different.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you, and it's a shame he just could not stay healthy. So, Zach, other big news, maybe the biggest news of the offseason to this point, depending on how you feel about the bullpen issues that we'll talk about here shortly. Mike Elias held a press conference last Friday announced that the Orioles overcorrected a few years back when they pushed the wall back and extended that left field wall. So now they're going to be moving it back in anywhere from 9 to 20 feet, depending on the part of the ballpark. The power alley is going to be a little bit more of a power alley rather than having to hit it 400 feet just to get it over the front of the wall. And they're also going to lower it. It's 13 feet in most spots. They're going to lower it down to anywhere from, I think I saw from 6 feet, 11 inches to 9 feet, depending again where it is in the ballpark. So it's still going to be, from what we're seeing, a pitcher-friendly ballpark, but it shouldn't be an issue where guys just can't hit home runs there. And, they're hitting like Ramon Arias, that ball that he hit in game 1 of the ALDS, the wild card series, that ball should have been gone. It would have been gone in 29 other ballparks. And instead it's an out. And the Orioles would have won that game if that ball gets over the fence. The new dimensions, that ball's a home run.
Westberg's home run too, or Westberg's flyout, I mean.
Westberg's flyout. And if you look at it statistically, and the Orioles play 81 games a year in that stadium. They lost more home runs than the opposition. The Orioles, I think I saw, lost 75 home runs because of Mount Walltimore, as opposed to the opposition losing, I think it was 67. So this should help the Orioles hitters. I don't think anybody's more relieved than Ryan Mountcastle to see this happen. I mean, we're talking about a guy who went from 33 home runs in his first full rookie season down to 22. I think he had 18 and 13 this past year. Yep. So he should be really happy about that. And it should attract some free agent right-handed hitters. Do you think that the Orioles were kind of testing the market a little bit and getting feedback saying these right-handed hitters don't want to come here? We've talked online a little bit about Alex Bregman and his power, how it would have been sapped in this ballpark. Does it put the Orioles in play more for players like that?
Oh, certainly. I mean, the wall itself wasn't amazing. I mean, the 6 other ballparks still gave up less home runs to left field, but now you're kind of bringing it back. You're balancing it now. This is probably what they should have went with first, but I think they looked at it as, we can't get pitchers here because we're always playing the Yankees, we're always playing Boston. We got to do something that's going to attract pitching, and that's how I think they overcorrected it. Now it's like, okay, now we have a really good team. Like, all these guys panned out. Now people want to come here, but now we need a little bit of help hitting, and then you don't want to shy away hitters. So I think now you're getting a good balance. Lowering it, I don't think it should have never been that high. The distance was probably fine. It was the height that killed everything. If they would have just kind of left it right around that 7 to 8 feet, they would have been better for the fans. It is what it is. It was basically done for free. I mean, the Stadium Authority paid for that one. The Orioles are going to pay for this one. They were able to, they have a little bit of free money to test it. They could have used it elsewhere, sure, but in the moment of the franchise, they had to make something to get pitching here because, as we've seen, I don't want to say they can't develop it. They're very slow at developing it. They don't want to rush anybody, so they needed help outside, and that was the way to do it.
Well, yeah, and you saw this was a team that it was a bandbox from 1992 through the end of 2021. We saw a team that was really struggling, but losing over 100 games in every full season from 2018 through 2021. And they know that they have their big prospects who are about to come up. Most of them left-handed hitters. Now we need to work on the pitching. Let's do something to get these pitchers here. I'm wondering if it was always in their plans to move it back to get the pitchers here, to get the Orioles kind of off and slow roll them into being a good team. And then eventually maybe we'll move it back in. I don't know if that's the case, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is. I'll tell you, you mentioned the Maryland Stadium Authority paid for it the first time. The Orioles are paying for it the second time. Things that former ownership would have never done.
Never.
And it's really awesome just to see that alone. It was nice to see David Rubenstein out in the stands throwing hats to everybody present in all these games and really making a name for himself in and around the ball club. But this is a move where you're paying for renovations that you had no part of, and you're coming in and saying, yeah, I'm going to pay for this. I think that that's a good sign for Orioles fans of what this guy's willing to do moving forward. And he came out and he said, look, I didn't buy a baseball team at my age to not win. So he's also going to expedite that process for the team. And so that alone just makes me think it's just the beginning of the things that he's willing to do to help this ball club. We were talking, go ahead.
There's actually some rumors too that they're clearing out the entire first level. And, the kids section is going to move up into where we don't really sell out those top left field seats.
Yeah.
So they're going to move the kids up there. They want to open it up a little bit more underneath. So, I mean, it sounds like they're putting a lot of money into it. Obviously, we already know the sound system is going to get fixed next year. I mean, he's putting them.
It's already actually been fixed.
A little bit, yeah. I think they said next year they fixed it this year, but they're upgrading next year.
Yeah. They really can't start making the renovations till after the 2025 season. I think that starting in 2026 they can start making renovations. It's going to take some time, but they've got a lot of money to spend, $600 million to spend on that stadium. I can't wait to see what they do. Chief, for me, you got to get rid of that obstructed view in right field by the scoreboard. Have you ever sat in those seats by that scoreboard? If you're not in the first few rows, you can't see right field.
Yep.
I think that's something they need to fix, and I would love to see an open concourse. But I don't know how they do that with the way the stadium's built. But that's a topic for another day, Zach. You were talking about how the wall was put in to attract pitching. And speaking of pitching, the Orioles have selected the contracts of pitchers Cade Stroud and Brandon Young from AAA Norfolk to protect those two right-handers from the Rule 5 draft at next month's winter meetings. A little write-up about them from MLB Trade Rumors says Cade Stroud, 27, was a 12th round pick of the Orioles in 2019. He's posted some intriguing numbers in the minors in terms of strikeouts and grounders, but also with a notable amount of walks. Over the past 2 years, he has thrown 106 and 2/3 innings with a 5.32 earned run average. His 12.3% walk rate in that time is certainly high, but he also struck out 28.4% of batters faced while getting grounders on more than half the balls in play he's allowed. As for Brandon Young, they said Young, 26, signed with the O's as an undrafted free agent in 2020. He missed decent chunks of both 22 and 23 due to elbow surgery, but seemed to get back on track this year. He tossed 111 innings over 27 appearances with AA and AAA, combining for a 3.57 ERA and striking out 28.5% of batters while giving out walks just 8% of the time. Brandon Young, we heard a lot about this past year because he was really tearing it up at the minor league level. Cade Stroud, I started to hear his name a little bit more the second half of the season as potentially being a bullpen option for the Orioles. We don't have to get too much into this. I don't know how deeply you know these guys and their abilities, but just your thoughts on those being the only two players that the Orioles have protected from the Rule 5 draft.
They were two of the ones that I would have definitely protected. Maybe one more. I can't remember his name right now, but when you kind of look at both of them and you look at how our upper level pitching has fanned out the last year and a half, 2 years, they all seem to have walk issues, but they seem to slowly correct themselves over time. So I'm not too worried about Cade so much. McDermott had a high walk rate last year. Povich had a high walk rate 2 years in a row, really. So when you look at that and you see them kind of progress a little bit, I would kind of put Cade on that same path, but he's going to progress a little bit more. The walk rate will go down. A lot of times they're still working on things, and that's what people don't get when they read these numbers is you're told to work on things. So, hey, I want you to work on throwing a cutter in on right-handers, trying to get underneath their hands. And if you're not perfect at it, like you're going to walk guys, but you're still working on it because they want that ready to go when you hit the big leagues. They don't really care too much about stats in AA and AAA. They do a little bit, but it's more of like, can you locate? Can you hit that third pitch and throw it where you want? Are you just a 2-pitch pitcher or are you a 3 guy? Like they're working on so many things that the numbers are good to look at sometimes, but they're also not because they're being told to do things. So I'm not too concerned about Cade. I mean, he runs the ball up in the upper 90s. Like we need that in the bullpen. So they'll work on the walks this year, especially in spring training. He'll probably get an invite to spring training. He'll be there with Drew Smith. I forget his name. Drew French. Sorry. So he'll be there with Drew. They'll work on things. He'll be around Felix and stuff. He'll be around a lot of guys that have been there that can give him little pointers and stuff, and then he'll go back and work on it. Same with Brandon Young. Brandon's got some good stuff. He's obviously not high 90 velocity guy, but he still throws hard, but he locates very well. And it doesn't seem like anything kind of rattles him when he gets runners on, and that's kind of where he really shines. I could also see him being a bullpen arm maybe a couple times this year. He'll be one of them guys that kind of rotate in and out a little bit. I don't think right now there's a dedicated spot for him on the team, but having him on the 40-man, get him in some extra money a little bit, it's good for both of those guys to stay in the organization.
Yeah, and I think it's important for the Orioles. The Orioles are not, chock full of pitching prospects. I think that's been, for all the great things Mike Elias has done and all the great drafts that he's had, I think where he's missed the boat is with the pitching. I know that's partially by design, but I also think that if you want to be a great team with a great future, you've got to have those arms in your system because you can't just go out and offer $250 million to the top free agent pitchers every year. You've got to have some guys that you can bring up and that are less expensive, especially when, you have ownership that has a ton of money, but you're not a large market team. You're a mid-market team. I don't want people to think the Orioles are a small market. They're about the same size market as San Diego. San Diego manages to have a top 5 payroll every year. I think that the Orioles maybe don't need to be top 5, but they can be top 10, but they're also still, because of that, because they're not going to be able to spend $350 million a year, have to be able to develop those pitchers and get them on cheap contracts to come up from the minor league system.
So I was actually really surprised the other day. I think it was maybe yesterday or the day before, but Baseball America actually announced that the Orioles are tied with Seattle for the top pitching organization in baseball.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not see that. That's surprising.
Yeah. So it's a lot of the talent was in Aberdeen this year. And like I said, they're very slow with developing these guys. Everybody's on a pitch count. They're not allowed to go more than 4 innings. They get a 40 to 60 pitch limit. Like, they're very, very slow with these guys. I think this year you'll start to see a step up in a lot of those guys getting a buoy. I see it in the comments here. Alex Pham. Alex Pham is a guy I see going to AAA probably. Zach Fruit is a name that we're going to need to pay attention to here shortly in the next 2 years probably. So they're very slow. There's some guys that were in Delmarva that probably didn't deserve to be there because they were damn good. But I mean, I think now Mike realizes that, okay, we're on a plan. We got to be a little slow because elbow injuries are inevitable. You can't get around them. Yeah. So I think that's a big reason why he's so slow. But I think he might start pushing it just a little bit. I mean, we got rid of 13 guys off of Norfolk's roster. So there's a lot of room, and a lot of them were pitchers. So there's a lot of room for the AA guys to move up, and which it's just going to open up more room at every single level. So I think we'll start to see a little bit clearer picture this year of some of the guys that have been drafted previously and how good they really are.
Yeah, and I think that there's I don't know how many of the guys are at those lower levels that are really starting to make a name for themselves amongst the baseball prospect reporting publications, but I have to imagine a lot of them are international slot guys who were signed during those international periods and have been in the system since they were 16, 17 years old, and they're working their way up. Because the Orioles seem to do pretty well since 2019 with the international signing. So I'd be interested to see how many of those are from that as opposed to the draft.
Yeah.
Now, the Orioles also have tendered contracts to most of their arbitration and pre-arbitration eligible players. All the guys who are pre-arbitration eligible were tendered contracts. The guys who are arbitration eligible, Gregory Soto, Cedric Mullins, Jorge Mateo, Ryan Mountcastle, Keegan Aiken, Trevor Rogers, Ramon Arias, Tyler Wells, Dean Kramer, Adley Rutschman, and Kyle Bradish have all been tendered contracts. Emmanuel Rivera was tendered a contract, and he agreed to terms to avoid arbitration. CNL Perez was arbitration eligible, but the Orioles already picked up his $2.2 million option for next season. The name that was not picked up And Matt Bowman elected free agency
Yeah.
rather than accept the outright to AAA, so he's out of the system, out of the organization too. The name that was not mentioned there is Jacob Webb. Jacob Webb has been non-tendered, and when you look at that, and you look at Danny Coulombe, whose $4.4 million option was not picked up by the Orioles. So he's a free agent now. Jacob Webb's a free agent now. These are the two guys, Zach, that down the stretch we were desperate to see come off the IL to give the Orioles some help out of their bullpen, as they were just falling apart the last few weeks of the season, last few months of the season, really. And now they're both not here. Are you surprised by this? I mean, Danny Coulombe in 94 games with the Orioles had a 2.56 ERA, a 9.51, a .951 WHIP, a 283 fielding independent pitching number, 90 strikeouts at just 17 walks and 81 innings pitched. He was one of the better left-handed relievers in the American League.
Yeah.
I thought it had to be an injury issue. They haven't said anything about it. Mike Elias said that, we have to make tough decisions. We still want to be able to see if we can bring him back down the line. Your thoughts on Danny Coulombe and now Jacob Webb both being off this Orioles roster for 2025? Will they come back? And why? And what are the Orioles' plans if they aren't bringing those guys back?
I think their plan is to upgrade. Danny, I would have kept Danny over Perez personally. I like Danny a lot. I know he missed some time with some bone spurs and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I think they look at Perez being able to throw upper 90s and getting back to where he was, being a little bit younger, honestly injury-free, knock on wood. Danny, I think, was definitely the biggest shock. I honestly think he ends up in New York or Boston. They're going to give him more than $4 million anyway. So Danny's, it's going to be tough to hit against him. Although he is 37. I get it, but Webb was a guy that Webb was really good against really bad teams. And when I pulled the numbers yesterday, he had like a 1.1 ERA against teams under 500. Teams over 500, it was like a 4.45 or something like that. And the walks skyrocketed. And I think we did want Webb and Danny back down the stretch because everybody else in the bullpen was so bad. Birch Smith and Bowman and whatnot, and having to deal with some of the other guys. Webb is serviceable. I don't think he's upgradable though. And if you go out and get, one of these like Kyle Finnegan, it randomly gets released, or Romano from the Blue Jays randomly gets released, or if you go out and get like a Kendall Graveman or a Kirby Yates, like all of them guys upgrade over Jacob Webb. Webb was just he was good here. I'm not going to take that away from him. He was good, not great. He was good. He seemed to he didn't give up a whole lot of home runs, but the walks were an issue. And we saw a lot of times when he came in, and Perez was the same way too. They would walk a guy, and then they would have a duck fart, or there would be an error, and then all of a sudden it led to a big inning. Now, a lot of times that's not their fault, but they didn't do a great job limiting the damage. Perez is another guy I would still like to upgrade from if they could. If he stays on the team, cool, whatever. But Webb was on my number one list to upgrade from pretty much since day one of the offseason. So him getting released isn't that big of a shock to me. I wanted him gone, to be honest.
Well, that's
I don't want to be mean about it, but
after 2023, he came over from the Angels. I think it was like his first 11, 12 appearances. It was like, why would they let this guy go? He had a 3.98 ERA, and that seems to be dropping with every appearance.
Yep.
And then the last 2 weeks of the year, he couldn't get anybody out. He's given up big home runs, and then you see him in that first playoff game against Texas, and the Orioles are in that game, and he gives up a big home run right after Bradish leaves. And
grand slam, wasn't it?
The next thing, yeah, no, the grand slam was in game 2.
Okay.
And I think that he came in right after Baker had walked the bases loaded.
Yep.
And then he gives up the grand slam. So he gives up 2 big home runs in 2 playoff games. And the second game is a game where the Orioles took a 2-0 lead in the first inning.
Yeah.
And so I was soured on Webb after 2023. Didn't expect him to be back. And then he was back, and he pitched well. And he was especially good against left-handed pitching in 2024. So, and then all you remember is how bad the bullpen was, how much they struggled. Craig Kimbrell just dropped off the face of the earth after the first half of the season. And you're like, we need somebody to come back. Let's get Webb off the IL. Let's get Coulombe off the IL. And it's just strange that now both of those guys are two of the first roster casualties in this 2024-25 offseason. I'm with you. I think that there's potential to do better than Jacob Webb. Danny Coulombe is the one where I'm like, what are we doing here? And it remains to be seen. But look, if the Orioles are going to spend money, they can spend money on relievers too. You've got Bautista coming back. You don't know what he's going to give you coming off of Tommy John surgery. You'd like to believe he's going to just hit the ground running and be throwing 103 again, but you never know. We saw it with John Means firsthand that Tommy John surgeries can be tricky, So we'll certainly see what's going to happen there. It's just definitely a big surprise for the Orioles and their fans that these guys are both gone before we even hit the winter meetings.
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of people kind of overlook the fact, I want to say going into the playoffs, we had, 4 or 5 lefties in the pen? You had like Aiken, Coulombe, Perez, and I forget the other guy. And then you also had Povich, who wasn't going to make a start. So there was a lot of lefties there, and I was thinking to myself, like, going into the season, can you have too many lefties in a bullpen? Because most of your hitters are right-handed, and we know how they like to do things. But Aiken really doesn't pitch in high leverage, but he gives you a lot of extended innings as a long man. So he's not going to go. Perez runs it in the upper 90s, obviously, so he wasn't going to go. If they go and get multiple starters and Povich goes in the pen, does Povich kind of take over Danny's spot? Like, there's a lot of things in play. Like, you would want to keep Danny, obviously, but you don't need 4 lefties in a pen either. Unless, but now if they upgrade Coulombe's spot with like an AJ Minter or something like that, I'm not going to complain here in a couple weeks at all. I don't think anybody will. It hurts right now. Hopefully it doesn't hurt in a couple weeks. Hopefully we can look back and say, okay, we just signed 2 really good relievers and it took Webb and Danny's spot. And I don't think we'll hear anything else about it.
Sure. And that was, you didn't even mention Gregory Soto as a lefty.
That's who it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and a ton of lefties, and so you can kind of see it from that standpoint. And when you look at Jacob Webb, he's not a lefty; he's a right-handed pitcher, but he was really good against lefties. I think there's value there in a guy who can get out both guys from both sides of the plate. But if you have a bunch of guys who can already get out lefties from the left side, it kind of makes his roster spot expendable.
Right.
And I really do agree with you. Orioles fans have PTSD, man. I mean, I think they've had 15 winning seasons in my entire life, and I'm 40 years old, So, I think that we're just so used to seeing the Orioles operate in a certain way that we don't know what to do with it. And so when we see stuff like this, it's just, okay, the wheels are coming off. What the hell's going on here? They have a plan. They know what they're doing. We just kind of got to wait and see what's going to happen. It's only November 23rd. We haven't even hit the winter meetings, haven't hit New Year's yet. We're still 2.5 months from spring training. I have confidence that they're going to do the right things and get the bullpen where it needs to be. I want to remind everybody today's show is brought to you by Help My Gambling Problem. If you or a loved one has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. That's 1-800-GAMBLER or Help My Gambling Problem for free confidential services. All right, Zach, we're going to take a little bit of a break for a couple minutes from the Orioles as to kind of go over the award season here. Ryan Mountcastle, Colton Cowser, they were finalists for first base and left field. They did not win. Carlos Santana of the Minnesota Twins won. I was surprised when I looked. He led the American League in games played at first base and had a .996 fielding percentage, so he deserved the honors there. And then Stephen Kwan. Stephen Kwan's going to win in left field more often than he's not. Colton Cowser being a rookie, splitting time between center field and left field. Colton Cowser, it doesn't take away from the fact that he is a very solid standout defensive outfielder. I mean, you also have to look at the fact that, like, Rafael Palmeiro one time won a Gold Glove, and I think he played 28 games at first base that year. Derek Jeter won 4 Gold Gloves, and he's statistically the worst fielding shortstop, everyday shortstop of all time. So we can kind of take the Gold Glove awards with a grain of salt. I'm not going to get too upset about stuff like that, For the MVP in the American League, Aaron Judge. In the National League, it was Shohei Ohtani. They were both unanimous decisions. Ohtani, the first full-time DH to win the award. A lot of guys had really good seasons, but when you put up the numbers, like the seasons that Ohtani and Judge had were historical. And when you put up those kind of numbers, you're going to win the Cy Young. I mean, the MVP. I don't really have any issues there. Cy Young. Cy Young is where there's a little bit of Tarek Skubal. I think he was the obvious front runner with that. He was going to win basically since the end of July. Were you surprised that Corbin Burnes was not a finalist? Or do you think that his August was just bad enough that it knocked him out of the running?
Oh, his August was absolutely terrible. Yeah, it was absolutely terrible. He had like an 8 ERA or something like that.
Yeah.
It was definitely over 6 or something. It was really bad. It did drop him out of the
right
race.
Around 8.
Yeah, it was bad. And then, I mean, he would have had to pitch absolutely outstanding in September and October to kind of get back to that. And September was good at the end, but even the beginning, it was like the first 2 starts were like just getting better from that bad August. And I think it was too long of a stretch for him to kind of stay in that top 3.
Yeah, he really, I mean, you'll see a starting pitcher, a really good starting pitcher. Everyone has one of those hiccup starts where they give up 6 runs in 3 innings. You see that. Burnes had 5 of them. He had 5 of those starts in a row. And then his first good start to get out of that, he gave up 5 runs, but 4 of them were unearned. So even that was kind of like, it was one unearned run. It was one earned run, but you really gave up 5. He did finish 5th in Cy Young voting for the American League. So it's he was represented, but not a top 3 finalist. And then in the National League, Chris Sale he has been so filthy for so long with the White Sox. He was just shredding everybody and everybody's jerseys, apparently. And then he goes to Boston, and he's one of the best. I cannot believe he did not win a Cy Young in Boston. And then he got hurt, had the elbow issues, comes back. He goes to Atlanta, and you kind of knew that when he signed with Atlanta, that was going to be like one of the sneaky signings of the offseason last year. And he goes out, he wins 18 games. He has the best ERA in the National League next to Paul Skeens. I think he led the majors in wins. Nice bounce back for Chris Sale, wins comeback player of the year and the first Cy Young of his career. But you can't talk about the Cy Young and not talk about Paul Skeens and what Paul Skeens did. He comes up, makes 11 starts in the first half and starts the All-Star game, has the lowest ERA of any starting pitcher, any qualified starting pitcher in Major League Baseball, wins the NL Rookie of the Year, which we'll get to here in a second, and is a Cy Young finalist. Was Paul Skeens a real threat to Chris Sale? And if, say, this was Paul Skeens' 2nd or 3rd season rather than his rookie season, do you think he would have had a better chance to win the Cy Young this year?
I think he would have had to pitch a little bit more than 111 innings or 110 or whatever he had. If he would have got maybe 2 or 3 more starts in, I think then the conversation would have started to happen. But honestly, also pitching in Pittsburgh and how bad their team is compared to like Atlanta being pretty good. I mean, they were right there in the playoffs. That bias always seems to sway, like, what have you done for your team to put them in a position kind of thing. I don't think Skeens was a threat at all this year. Is he a threat next year? 100%. He's probably likely going to be the betting favorite to open up 2025. Again, but being in Pittsburgh, though, he might be. But again, the whole Pittsburgh thing, if somebody else is comparable and their team makes the postseason and Pittsburgh wins 60 games again or 70 games, we might see Skeens miss out again. That bias is pretty big in baseball. I don't think people realize that.
No, it's huge. I think it's absolutely huge. That's why you see a lot of New York teams and a lot of New York players being talked about for things like this. Like, you look at the Yankees, they were voted the American League's best offensive team, and it's like you take now they're the two of the best players in the game. You take Judge and Soto out of that lineup and replace them with replacement level players, and that team is middle to bottom of the pack. Which is, it's a lot to say, but they won Offensive Team of the Year for the American League because of 2 players, in my opinion, really. Now you look at Paul Skeens. He also pitched, like you said, pitching in Pittsburgh. It's a pitcher-friendly ballpark. Left field is the only stadium that was harder to hit a home run in than Camden Yards. I think Camden Yards' dimensions are bigger, but for some reason, I don't know if it's the location of the stadium, the weather there, or what, it's really hard to hit a home run out to left field in Pittsburgh.
It's a crosswind. It blows out to right field.
Yeah. And so that really helps out pitchers, including Paul Skeens. And then you look at the Braves, they were in playoff contention basically all year. And they half their team was on the injured list for most of the year. They lost their best player and the reigning MVP in Ronald Acuna Jr. They were beat up all season long, and so for Chris Sale to go out there and put that team on his back on the mound every fifth day and win 18 games, have that low ERA, I think that he earned that Cy Young by far and away.
100%. Yeah.
Rookie of the Year, American League, Luis Gil. He won 15 games, pitched to a 3.5 ERA. Colton Cowser, we thought that he was the odds-on favorite. Nobody really, I mean, Gil kind of had a hiccup in the middle of the season where he didn't pitch well for a few weeks, and it put Colton, and then Colton Cowser got hot right around that same time. It put him in the driver's seat for Rookie of the Year. Austin Wells came through and made a run at it. You didn't really hear too many people talking about Cowser and Gil. It was Cowser and Wells.
Yeah.
And then, sure enough, when they put up the finals, I forgot that Gil was the finalist. And I saw his numbers, and I was like, he's gonna win. He's a pitcher in New York putting up numbers like that, and he's not really a rookie, but he is a rookie. He's gonna win. Cowser finishes 5 votes shy of Gil. Very tight race. Did you take issue with it? Aside from being a Baltimore sports fan, did you take issue with the fact that Gil won over Cowser? Did you think Cowser was more deserving?
I wouldn't have put Gil in my top 3.
Okay.
For me, it would have been Cowser, Mason Miller, Austin Wells. Gil had a good first half. His second half was abysmal. And the fact that he won is kind of a joke, in my opinion. Not being a Baltimore sports fan, but just looking at how bad he was in the second half. Like, I did some numbers on it. He was 74th in ERA in the second half. He gave up 72nd amount home runs. He was 103rd out of 114 in walks, only 81st in Ks. He was 73rd in slugging and 110th out of 114 in xFIP. And he had a third most walks per 9. Like, he was terrible. And I guess they thought it was good enough. And his last start of the year, he gave up 4 home runs to Pittsburgh. And I don't know. It was weird to me. The first half was really good. It was really good. He had the most Ks. He still had the most walks in the first half too. But even in the first half, he was 114th out of 117 in xFIP. Like, the numbers were really misleading on Gil, in my opinion. It was like he walked a ton of guys, and then like an error would happen, and then he didn't get charged as earned runs anymore. He still struck out a ton of guys, and the fact that it's his 3rd season, statistically, it's just weird. I mean, I know he got hurt in 21 and 22, but it was his 3rd time in the major leagues. Like, he made a start against the Orioles in 2021. Like, and I know Cowser played a little bit in 23. Like, I get that whole numbers thing, but once it's your 3rd year, like, guy's 27 years old? Like, I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't have put him up there as a rookie, so to say.
And I think that it goes back to your point about the bias. You know, there is bias when it comes to this stuff. It's a real thing, especially when it comes to the New York teams and Luis Gil. You know, and look, there's a common misconception amongst Baltimore Orioles fans that I hate Colton Cowser. I do not hate Colton Cowser. I think he's a really good player. I think that he needs to learn how to hit off speed a lot better than he did, because I don't know why anybody would throw him a fastball. But I think that he, like, as a rookie, to go out there and hit 24 home runs, to drive in 77 runs, to be able to play that kind of a defense, his outs above average, I think, was one of the leading numbers in amongst American League outfielders. Really good player who's only going to get better. It's not like I'm looking at Colton Cowser and saying, this is his ceiling and this isn't good enough. No, he's going to get better. You know, I just had an issue with he struggled for 3 months. He hit 180 for 3 months after his 3-week tear to start the season. And I just don't think that should be acceptable at the big league level. When Chris Davis was doing that, we were trying to run him out of town. Now, he was also making $23 million a year when he was doing that. Cowser's making, league minimum right now. But I'm excited to have Colton Cowser here. I'm excited to have him in the Orioles lineup in 2025, playing outfield at a high level. And I'm excited to see him take that next step forward. But I do think that if you look at the rookies across the American League, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody more deserving than Colton Cowser for that award. So with Luis Gil, yeah, you win 15 games, you have a 3.5 ERA, that's good, but it's also like a lot of that was done in the first half of the season.
Yeah, it was like a 4.64 in the second half or something. It was pretty bad. Wilmer Abreu got snubbed out of the top 3 too. I mean, there were some good players in the AL that just kind of got overshadowed. Cade Smith had a really good season in Cleveland, and no one even talked about him. It was dominant. Same with Miller, just absolutely dominant in the bullpens, but you just don't hear about relievers that much.
And you don't hear about. And when there's players on those top of the market teams, you're going to hear about them a lot more. I always said that if Derek Jeter played anywhere but New York, he's Paul Molitor. Like people he's a Hall of Famer, but people don't talk about him as a legend of the game. They talk about him the same way they talk about Paul Molitor, and it's because he played in New York. But
if you put him in Tampa Bay, put him in Tampa Bay, and nobody ever even talks about him ever.
Yeah, exactly. The next thing you know is he's just that guy that he's that guy who put up over 3,000 hits. You're like, wow, that was a really quiet 3,000 hits.
Yeah.
But we're also Orioles fans, so we could be accused of bias there. But
well, I mean, Cowser struck out a lot. Like, we're not going to sugarcoat it, and he really struggled with runners in scoring position. But even in his second half, he hit 82 strikeouts, which is really incredible to do. It's hard to do that, honestly. But he still hit 268 with 12 home runs. Like, he had a good second half. Now he really just struggled with runners in scoring position. And when you're young, and we see it across all the Orioles young hitters, they struggle to hit off speed. You're always told, hit off the fastball, hit off the fastball, hit off the fastball. Where we saw Gunnar start to make an adjustment this year was he started to hit the off speed in year 2. I think you're going to see a little bit more of that out of Cowser this year too. So we're going to see a better player.
He's going to take a big step forward, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, a big step forward, if he goes from hitting 245 to hitting 265, 270, those home runs are going to go up, those doubles are going to go up. He's still going to play that great defense. I think Colton Cowser is just scratching the surface of what his potential is.
Yeah, I mean, he had, 170-something strikeouts? If he cuts that to we'll just give him 125. Cut it down to 125, but if you still hit 25 to 30 home runs, I'm not going to complain at all. Yeah. Like, just cut it down just a little bit.
And he's got amazing opposite. Yeah, he struck out 172 times this year. And I think cutting down 50 walks from one season to the next, I mean, 50 strikeouts from one season to the next, I think that's a big number. You know what I mean?
It is.
But if you even drop down 25, maybe 30 strikeouts, you're still putting the ball in play that much more. Better things are going to happen. And that opposite field power, when they're moving that wall in too, I think you're going to see a jump just from that for Cowser. Yeah. I'm excited to see what he's going to do because, man, when he gets a hold of one, the home runs that he hits are no doubters. And it's exciting to think about what he can be moving forward since he just did this in his rookie year. And you saw how much he struggled in those 26 games in 2023. Comes up, and he was the Orioles' best hitter the first 3 weeks of the season this year. And then, once he acclimated to the adjustments that pitchers made to him, he refound that circle. Like you said, 268 with 12 home runs the second half. He's on his way up. I'm excited for the player that he's going to be.
Yep.
National League, Paul Skeens, he wins the NL Rookie of the Year. I think that's fitting. I mean, look at all the things he did as a rookie. Starts the All-Star game, lowest ERA in the majors, and he's a Cy Young finalist. That is really tough to beat. You can't really top that. But what Jackson Merrill did, starting the year at 20 years old, he's 21, most of the year at 21 years old. He hits 290 with a 326 on base percentage. He steals 16 bags, 24 home runs, 90 RBI. A 127 OPS plus as a 21-year-old in his first season in the big leagues. If Paul Skeens didn't exist, Jackson Merrill's the unanimous MVP.
Unanimous.
And, I mean, the unanimous Rookie of the Year in the National League. But Paul Skeens is a freak.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people don't know. I mean, so San Diego made the playoffs by 3 games, 4 games?
Something like that.
So Merrill actually set a record for 7 go-ahead or game-winning home runs in the 8th and 9th inning. It hasn't been done since the 80s. So if they lost 3 of those games, they don't even make the playoffs. So that's where I think his biggest argument was over Paul was he single-handedly put his team in the playoffs with 7 swings. And Paul's team won, 60 games or something? Like, there's an argument to be made for Merrill. Merrill had it was a quietly fantastic season, and I think a lot of it, and I say quietly because the East Coast doesn't get to see the West Coast that often. Mm-hmm. But what he was doing out there was pretty incredible.
Yeah. Oh, he was absolutely phenomenal, and he started the year. He hit the ground running, with a couple of hits in that series over in Japan. Or was it Korea? Korea or Japan?
It's Korea.
They started the year over there, and he had a big hit in that first game, a big double in the first game of the season. So Jackson Merrill certainly deserving. Again, it just comes up against a freak of nature with Paul Skeens, and that's going to be a guy. Jackson, we want to talk about just scratching the surface. This is a guy who's probably going to hit 320 in this league with 35 home runs. He's going to be an MVP candidate as soon as 2025. Yep. Today's show brought to you by Glenn Clark Radio. If you missed anything from Glenn Clark Radio this week, including Matt Stover, Lorenzo Neal, Orioles first base coach Anthony Sanders, and more, you can find them all right now in the Glenn Clark Radio Week in Review feature at PressBoxOnline.com. And you can watch or listen to GCR every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on at PressBoxOnline.com/radio, right here on Facebook and YouTube. All right, what the people came for, man. Orioles rumors. John Paul Morosi hopped on MLB Network the other day saying that the Orioles and Dodgers appear to be the, in quotes, two teams that stand above the others for Corbin Burnes. Are you buying that at all?
A little bit. Just a little bit. We'll give it 35% yes. Okay. You know what you got out of Burnes. Burnes knows what he's got here. The Dodgers just seem to want to buy everybody. So they're definitely always in play for almost everybody. Why I say 35%, and I might take some flack for saying this, I think the Orioles value Max Fried or Blake Snell a little bit over Burnes. And not because that they're better, but just because they're left-handed. And the left-hander plays into the wall a little bit better. Burnes gave up 22 home runs last year. Now, most of them were solos, and it seemed like all of them were the first or second inning, which I get. But, Snell only gave up 6. And Fried, I think, only gave up like 10 or something like that, or 10 or 12. But having a left-hander pitch into the wall and forcing right-handed hitters into a lineup, I think they value just a little bit more. But I still think if those guys fly off the board quickly, they want Burnes back. So it's not like they're just writing him off. I think if they had to put a value number on these guys, I think Snell's probably number 1. And then you'll probably have Burnes and Fried both at 2A and 2B.
I think it's a lot of Scott Boras leveraging these two teams against each other to jack up that price. I think that Corbin Burnes, I don't know how much he loved pitching in Baltimore. Some of the body language and the conversations that he would have in the middle of the season about free agency, I don't know how much he loved being here. And there are factors that I have in my mind. I've been outspoken on the show about it. I'm not going to get into that. When you think about the fact that he just had twins during the All-Star break, he's from California. His family lives in California. He grew up an Angels fan. I don't think he wants to pitch for the Angels until they can prove that they're legitimate playoff contenders. When I say you buying it, it's like, I don't know how much the Orioles are in. I don't think that they can compete with the Dodgers for Corbin Burnes' services unless the Dodgers think that he can be had for a hometown discount.
Yeah.
But it's an embarrassment of riches over there, and them adding Corbin Burnes would be just that much more of the embarrassment of riches. And so, I'd like to think that the Orioles are in on them, but I agree with you. I think that they're looking at the top of the market at the left-handed pitching. I mean, Max Fried has an elite ground ball rate. They've got a young athletic infield that's playing behind them. They're super strong up the middle with Adley. At least Adley as a defensive catcher. The arm is, lacking. But then Cedric in center, arm lacking, but the defense is great. And then Gunnar at short. And then whether you're going to have Westberg at second base or you're going to have Holiday, I believe in Holiday's glove a lot more than other people. I just think that he needs more seasoning. Yeah. But Fried could be the guy that the Orioles really target as their top priority in the free agent market for pitching. Ken Rosenthal, in his offseason notebook for The Athletic, stated the Orioles, needing to replace Burnes at the front of their rotation, are exploring the top of the market and the blessing of their new ownership. At the moment, they appear more focused on Snell and possibly Fried, who's on vacation and will meet with clubs when he returns. So for you, Zach, between Corbin Burnes, Blake Snell, and Max Fried, if you were calling the shots and you could have one of those three, who would you pick?
One of the three. I have my doubts about all three of them. I would probably go Fried because he's younger. The thing with Snell is phenomenal. What he did in the second half last year was almost historic. What was it, 102, 108 strikeouts in 60 innings? Like, it was incredible to watch. But he's only pitched over 130 innings twice.
I won a Cy Young both of those years.
Right. But is that good enough now for the Orioles to only get 130 innings out of him? We got 180 something out of Burnes, right? Fried got what? So and then Fried gets like 170. Like, so you're talking about Snell potentially missing 5 starts. So are you prepared for Snell to miss 5 starts? Now Fried, he did miss a full season. Burnes has stayed fairly healthy his entire career. Again, you know what you're getting out of Corbin, but I would probably take Fried just because he keeps the ball in the ballpark a little bit more, and he's left-handed. He's young. He's also going to help a guy like Cade Povich a little bit better. And I kind of wanted to talk about what you said about Corbin and what he said. He's been doing that for 3 years. So to me, it's like when he was in Milwaukee, you could tell he wanted out of Milwaukee bad, and he couldn't wait to get to free agency. Yeah, and he did the same thing here. It was like it's almost like he's just in it to pitch really good for himself. You know, if the team wins and he wins a championship, cool. He doesn't care. He wanted that big payday. I didn't get that sense of teammate out of him. Not saying that he's not. I just didn't get the sense out of it because he's been saying the same stuff for so long. Like, he kind of just discredited Milwaukee quickly. Milwaukee should have never traded him for Joey Ortiz and DL Hall. They should have never done that. Those were good guys for us, but that package for what Corbin Burnes was almost is laughable. Like, Corbin Burnes was that good, right? He was a year removed out of the Cy Young, and you just kind of gave him away. So, and it's because a lot of it because of attitude. We didn't hear about the attitude here. We don't hear a whole lot about the Orioles out here, but we didn't hear about the attitude. But like you said, we've seen it. And I don't know long-term if I would want that around, because say you gave him a 5 or 6 year deal and things didn't go right year 1 and 2, right? We didn't win a championship. Maybe he only wins 12, 13 games. What are you getting out of year 3? Are you going to start getting a guy showing more attitude again, or what? Like, I'd be just a little cautious with that, just because we've seen it outside of Baltimore too. So, granted, both are smaller market teams or mid-market teams. Would he do that in the Dodgers? Probably not. I don't know. I feel like Fried has a little bit better of a head on his shoulders. He's been doing a lot of great things. He worked with Drew prior in Atlanta too, so the relationship's already there. He would probably be my pick.
Yeah, and Max Fried's kind of been the guy I've been thinking about. I've just assumed Corbin Burnes was gone. I don't know how much he likes the manager here. And so for me, it was kind of like, at first I was like, I think the Orioles are going to put every egg in that basket and try and resign him. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, there's going to be West Coast teams, the Padres, the Giants, the Angels, the Dodgers. They all want his services and could use his services. Every team could. I just don't see him being here. Now, should the Orioles sign 2 of these guys? Because you look at what their rotation is right now. You're not getting Bradish back till at the earliest after the All-Star break, if not the last month of the season. Tyler Wells is likely, when he does come back in the second half, he's going to your bullpen. You've got Grayson Rodriguez, Zach Eflin, and Dean Kramer that are basically etched in stone in your rotation. And then you're going to try and sign one of these guys. You're going to bring a free agent starter. Hopefully somebody from the top of the market. Hopefully you're bringing in another guy. Should it be 2 of these guys at the top of the market? Or should they say, we're going to bring in one. We're going to hope that September from Cade Povich is who he really is. A lot of similarities to Max Fried in the delivery there too, and then in the stuff. Your thoughts on the Orioles rotation and what they should be doing in this free agent market?
I would definitely go with 2, but I would not be 2 of the top end guys. Because if you do that, you're taking money away from the bullpen. And I think the bullpen is where you need to spend a lot of money in. And Tanner Scott is a big name that I really want. If you can't land Scott, Kirby Yates or Estevez or Finnegan, if you want to take a role on that. You need at least 2 or 3 quality arms in the bullpen, and you'll get that out of the money that you would pay for the second top end starter.
Sure.
You can still go get. Would you call Max Scherzer and say, "Hey, I need you to be my number 4 or number 5. Like here's $17 million. Like come in here and give your veteran presence." Or if you call Eovaldi or something like that, like there's some still quality arms that you could put behind Eflin and Grayson that are still have pretty big names and still some pretty good big stuff. I just wouldn't put a ton of money into another top end starter. Would it be nice? Sure, but then your bullpen's really going to struggle. And I think you can kind of what you're going to give to Snell or Burns. They're both going to be over 30 in my opinion, and you can spread 30 out among multiple people and still have a quality team.
Absolutely. And yeah, I was leading the charge to go get Verlander at the deadline, and then he got hurt, and he said he wouldn't waive his no trade clause. I thought he was going to retire after the last year. The fact that he's still willing to pitch, if he can be healthy, yeah, I would take a year of Max Scherzer. I'll say the same thing about Justin Verlander.
Yeah.
Nathan Eovaldi, for me, I think the Orioles need 2 starters. And for me, my wish list for that is Max Fried and Nathan Eovaldi. I wanted Eovaldi last year. I think that he's a big game pitcher, and I think that he's a guy who, he would slide into that 4 slot in your rotation, but he's really like a low-end number 2 or a high-end number 3, in my opinion. Eovaldi, I think, would be a beautiful thing here.
And he could be a 4 here, right? Like, because we know Eflin's good. We know Grayson's got good stuff. Like, we don't need you to go be that guy. Like, face a number 4 starter, where you're not pitching in big games all the time. And then come October, hey, could you imagine Eovaldi coming out of the bullpen? Because he's used to it. He's done it before. If you need him at a spot starting a game 4, you got it. But that's a big difference between Eovaldi and Kramer. And
you're looking to the future too, right? Because we're talking about 2025, but you're also looking like you're going to sign one of these guys. If you sign a Max Fried or a Blake Snell to a contract, you're looking 6-7 years with these guys. So they're going to be here. Zach Eflin's a free agent at the end of 2025. Kyle Bradish was the Orioles' best starting pitcher this year before he got hurt. And he was a Cy Young. In my opinion, he should have been a Cy Young finalist. He was better than Gausman in 23. And he was even better than that in 2024. If he comes back and he's the same Kyle Bradish once he gets up and running again, that's a guy in your rotation in 2026 that replaces maybe a Zach Eflin. And now you're looking at one of the top rotations in baseball. When you have a Fried, a Grayson, a Bradish, maybe you have Nathan Eovaldi and then Dean Kramer's your number 5. Right. Or maybe you re-sign, Dean Kramer's gone, and you keep Eflin. This Orioles rotation has the potential to be really, really good for the foreseeable future, depending on who they sign in the next few weeks and months. I'm excited. That's probably what I'm the most excited about for this team is the pitching. And speaking of the pitching, Roki Sasaki. The Orioles have been linked by numerous local publications to the Japanese phenom, rightfully so. He's expected to wait until the international signing period to sign the next one, which opens on January 15th. The current one that closes December 15th. He cannot sign a market-setting deal because of his age, but he is expected to command anywhere from $5 to $7.5 million when that signing period opens. Whoever does sign him is expected to use just about every penny of their bonus pool to sign him. You look at who has the most money. The Athletics, Brewers, Mariners, Marlins, Rays, Reds, Tigers, and Twins have the most bonus pool money at $7.55 million. The Orioles are in that next tier along with the D-backs, Guardians, Pirates, Rockies, and Royals at $6.9 million. Dodgers are in the lowest tier. Dodgers are rumored to be the favorites to sign him, but they only have $5.1 million to spend in the international signing period. The only team from that top tier that I think has a legitimate chance to sign him is the Seattle Mariners. It makes a lot of sense for the Mariners to bring Sasaki in. They'd have to, and they would still have not a lot of money, but a little bit of money left over probably. The Orioles, they'd probably have to spend every penny to bring Sasaki in. I think they should make an effort. I imagine that they will, but I think reality is going to set in pretty quick there, Zach. I just don't see Mike Elias being willing to spend all of his money in the international signing period on one player. Your thoughts on the Orioles and their ability to sign Roki Sasaki?
I could see him making a run at it, but what really scares me is there's no rule against being able to sign a guy and immediately giving him an extension. Mm-hmm. So who's to say that the Dodgers aren't going to be like, hey, we'll give you $2 million, and then in 6 months we'll give you a 5-year, $240 million deal, right? And if it's on paper, they got to come to the terms. That's what scares me because that's not illegal in baseball.
Sure,
there's manipulations around this for the bigger market teams that don't have as much money to kind of swoop in. But being said that, I could see, like you said, the Mariners and the Marlins. The Marlins are always very, very active in the international market, and they're always they always spend money in weird places. Like they're trying to like cut payroll in the front office and stuff. They never pay absolutely anybody when it comes to their team, but they always seem to just go spend a ton of money in the international market, and they always find quality players. And they wouldn't shock me. Tigers too. The Reds have been willing to spend a lot of money lately. He's an interesting guy. I definitely think the Orioles get outbid for that. Like you said, I don't think Elias would want to pony up the full $6 million. He's a guy that likes to sign a lot of quantity in the free agent market. Now he spent a little bit on some certain players, $2 to $3 million. I think that would be a little bit more realistic if the market was down around that low. I don't think it is, but and we'll see. I mean, if it's not him, I mean, obviously you want a guy throwing 103 miles an hour. I mean, who wouldn't? But
at 23 years old,
yeah, I don't see him getting past LA or Boston or the Giants. There's going to be some kind of backdoor deal where he's going to go to a big market team. Yeah, and we're not going to hear about it at first.
A lot of people don't think about that. A lot of people don't think about the fact that, somebody's going to come in and be like, hey, we're going to give you this much money, but we got to get you in here first.
Yep.
And it's real. There's stuff that we don't see in every industry across the globe. Baseball is no different. It's a business first and foremost. And the owners and these teams, they run it like a business. And I can totally see what you're saying with them offering that huge contract on the back end. John Heyman reports that Garrett Crochet is drawing big interest from the Orioles, Red Sox, Dodgers, and Phillies. Orioles have already traded, as you alluded to, DL Hall, Joey Ortiz, Connor Norby, and Kyle Stowers in the last 9+ months. Next best prospects are Jackson Holliday, Kobe Mayo, Samuel Basayo, Heston Kjerstad. Would and should the Orioles be willing to trade one or two from that group to get a talent like Crochet? Or could he be had by trading one top prospect, maybe a major league player? What would that look like? Would you do it?
I would stay pretty far away from Crochet personally. His comments last year really put me off on him. I mean, you're looking at a guy who's only had one good year in his career, multiple injuries, and then you're going to just make a comment like that, like, I'm not pitching in October without an extension. Like, what have you done in this league? What have you done outside of 2023 for people to know that you're going to continue this? You're coming in at what? He's 27, 28?
I don't know that is he that old?
I'm not 100% sure. But either way, like the guy's been here for a while. Yes, he's going to get better and stuff. He's coming into his prime. I get that. But if he wouldn't have made those comments, I would have said, okay, cool, maybe let's find somebody. But I don't know. Like, this team is built around everybody getting along. And if I'm not saying that Crochet is a bad teammate by any means, but what if he is? What if you brought that into this clubhouse? Like, I don't know. I would just kind of stay away just because he hasn't done anything prior to last year. I'm not giving up a Basayo for that or a Mayo. Like, what if he comes back over here and he goes back to what he was and he just stinks? Or if he's just a middle of the road guy, like, you've already got a middle of the road guy in Povich who's younger and cheaper. Like, I don't know. And I'm sitting here looking at some of these names that we've traded too, and I'm thinking, like, would we have maybe even traded some of these guys if the wall that we're moving to was the wall then? Like, we traded all right-handed guys. Like, would we have traded some of these guys if they didn't move the wall? Yeah. It just popped in my head. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, Connor Norby. I mean, I don't know if you saw the video I posted at the trade deadline. when they traded Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers for Trevor Rogers, I didn't mind trading those two players. I minded them trading them for the player that they got in return. And Trevor Rogers, a guy we didn't even talk about as being a rotation option for the Orioles next year. I mean, he's going to have to prove it and then some in spring training and at the beginning of the season if he wants that job. But I hated that move. And the Orioles, the one thing they lacked the second half of the season, and especially after the trade deadline, was a right-handed hitter who could put the ball in play and get on base. And Connor Norby, what was just burst out of a shotgun for the Marlins. Now he came back down to earth a little bit there, but Connor Norby's a player who I think is going to hit 280 with 20 home runs in this league when he gets off and running. And I was not happy about that trade, and I don't know that I'd be happy about getting rid because the fact of the matter is you don't have enough room on your roster right now for Jackson Holliday, Kobe Mayo, Samuel Basayo, and Heston Kjerstad. They're not all going to play here, and they're all just about. I mean, 3 of those guys are ready now. Basayo will be ready soon enough. Where are you going to put all these guys? One of these guys is going to be traded, in my opinion. If it's for Garrett Crochet, if Garrett Crochet can come in here, I agree with you. Those comments rub me the wrong way. Who the hell are you to say I'm not pitching out of the bullpen? I'm not pitching in October without an extension. You're nobody, man. Like. You're somebody, you're becoming somebody, but earn it. To me, that speaks to who he is as a person, and if you're going to come into this clubhouse, I don't want a cancer on this team.
Right.
Now, I think you and I are both, if the first thing the Orioles do at the winter meeting is a trade Heston Kjerstad and, Vance Honeycutt for Garrett Crochet, I don't think we're going to sit here and cry about it. We're not going to be like, oh no, Garrett Crochet's in our rotation. We'll be fine with it. But it's not the move that we want to see right now. And I agree with you on that.
Yeah. If it happens, it happens. Like, obviously, we'll be a little bit excited to get a good left-handed starter in here. But I feel like there's some other guys that they could potentially, if they're going to trade, there's some other guys that I would maybe look at first. Let somebody else trade away. Like, I've seen some mock trades with Boston and stuff, and they're talking about getting rid of their 3 best players. Very, very good players. No shot I would do that for Garrett Crochet. Now, if that was Chris Sale, sure. But Garrett Crochet having one good year, I don't know.
Yeah, do a little more. I agree. I agree with you.
The White Sox,
offensively,
their White Sox GM, he's high. Like, everything I've ever seen coming out of this guy's mouth, he's high. Like, he expects the moon. Like, he asked for Jackson Holliday. Like, I'm sorry, bud. Like, no way. And then you're going to tell Austin Slater that that was your number 1 guy in the offseason? Is that the only guy you planned on even signing? Like, he's just high. He has no.
They had no chance at getting the number 1 overall pick in the draft this year because they'd already had back-to-back. Because they pay into revenue sharing. Yeah. And they also had a lottery pick last year, so they were not eligible to get the number 1 overall pick despite having the most losses in a baseball season in the modern era. Yep. So this is, to me, that says we're going to be terrible again next year and try and get that number 1 overall pick.
Yep.
And it could be Jackson's brother Ethan. Is he going into the draft this year?
Yeah, he's projected number 1, pretty unanimously. Yeah.
Yeah. That's.
I made a joke about it. I was like, what if somehow, I know the Orioles odds are way low, but what if somehow they got it?
Yeah,
wouldn't that be wild?
I don't think that the Orioles can. I don't think that they're in there because they
even if they lost a lot.
You're talking about for 2026.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would have to lose a lot. You can't be a top 17 team record wise to be able to qualify for that.
Oh,
but that would
have been funny though,
right? Multiple publications have linked Teoscar Hernandez to the Orioles. For me, this should be their top offensive target. I've been outspoken about the Orioles talking to Juan Soto. Look, just because I say that they should talk to Soto doesn't mean I expect them to sign him. Soto's not coming to Baltimore unless he's on a visiting team, right? We know the markets that he's going to be playing in are likely LA or New York with an outside shot at Boston, and I still don't think that that's likely. So for me, my realistic target is Teoscar Hernandez. Even with that wall, if he had played every game in Baltimore last year, he would hit 28 home runs. The wall's been moved in. What does a contract look like for Teoscar Hernandez? Are the Orioles going to be willing to give up their second highest draft pick this year to get him? Because he was extended a qualifying offer. And And does his signing preclude the team from re-signing Anthony Santander?
I think Santander's definitely gone, regardless if they get Hernandez or not. Hernandez, I think you're going to look around a 3 for 70 or 3 for 75. Because, like you said, even if he only hit 28 home runs here last year, he still hit like 320 with runners in scoring position. And he still hit 280 something overall. Like, this is a really good hitter. And you saw him do it in Toronto, and he went out to LA on a 1-year deal, and he did it in LA. Like, he's just a hitter. And yeah, that would be my top priority. Right-handed outfielder. I don't want him to play outfield every day. I would prefer him to DH more to stay healthier, keep the legs going, and then spell some guys out in the outfield once in a while. Maybe go out and play left field or right field once in a while. If you kept Kjerstad, I would like Kjerstad probably to play right field every single day, and then maybe rotate that right left-handed split kind of thing. But keep his legs healthy kind of thing. I would find a way to pony up $70-ish million for him.
Yeah, I think he's the guy that should be the number one offensive target for the team. He makes too much sense for this ball club for everything that they're needing. And you talk about Santander and how you don't think that he's going to be back. We're going to be talking Tony Taters here in just a second. Just want to remind everybody, today's show brought to you by the latest edition of Press Box, which is available now. On the cover, Brooks DeBoe's profiles of Baltimore built duo of Julian Reese and Derek Queen as a former St. Francis teammates reunite in College Park with hopes of bringing the Terps back to prominence. Also inside me, college basketball players from every program around the state. And you can find that print issue of Press Box all throughout the region, including at 60 Royal Farm stores. And you can read it all at PressBoxOnline.com. That Maryland basketball team looks so much better than last year. Oh, yeah. I mean, what they did against Marquette, who just beat Alabama the other day, and then what they did against, I can't remember the name of that team, began with a C. Was it Canisius?
Yeah, something weird like that.
They beat them by like 80 points. It was like the second largest margin of victory for a Division I school in NCAA history. They look like a unit right now compared to last year. I'm excited for Maryland basketball this year, but I'm always excited for baseball. And like I said, talking Tony Taters, we all love the human being. We like the player. His price tag, is it worth what he offers? And you look at it, the defense, I think for how slow he is and his size, his defense is actually pretty good. So I'll say his defense is okay. He hits a lot of home runs. He hits for low average, 235 this past season, 246 for his career. He's got that low on-base percentage, 308 this past season, 307 for his career. He hit 234 with runners in scoring position in 2024 as opposed to his 251 career number. And then some numbers that were small, but they were telling to me. With runners on second and third last season, 0 for 11, 3 walks, and he had no sacrifice flies. Runners in scoring position and 2 outs last season. 0 for 9 with runners in scoring position and 2 outs last season. Now, look, when I say second and third, I mean solely second and third. He came up with the bases loaded, I think he had 300 with the bases loaded, or no, it was like 222, but he had 2 grand slams. But with runners just on second and third, 0 for 11 and no sacrifice flies. And with runners on second and third and 2 out, 0 for 9. Yep. To me, that says a lot about his situational hitting, and that his situational hitting is frankly garbage. And I've been saying this for 3 years now. Anthony Santander, I love the player. And I think he's so great for that clubhouse, for the culture around that team. But he cannot hit third or fourth in your order. He doesn't get on base enough. He doesn't hit for high enough of an average. He fails in run-producing situations, and he strikes out too much. He doesn't strike out a lot, but he strikes out too much in those big situations. He had an opportunity in Game 2 of the wild card series to do some damage. With nobody out and the bases loaded, he pops out to shallow right field.
First pitch, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, first pitch. And then you knew Kowser's not getting a fastball to hit here, so he's not going to do anything. And you knew that Adley, with how bad he's been, you knew as soon as Santander popped out that inning was over. Yeah. And that's kind of the feeling that I would get with Santander, especially down the stretch. In June, in July, and the first part of August, the guy is a world beater. But he doesn't hit till the middle to end of May, and he doesn't hit in September. And you're going to give that guy $20+ million a year for the next 5 to 6 years. I'm out, man.
Yeah.
Love the guy, but I'm out.
206 career average in September and October.
Yep.
Like that right there was telling for me. Like I'm done at that point. Like I want a guy who can hit when it matters, and it matters in September and October. I don't care what you do in July. Like cool. You do a great June, July, August. That's really awesome. It helps the team. Awesome. Those games matter, but they don't at the same time. They matter in September when you're fighting and you want to get in a rhythm. You can't be having your 3 and 4 hitter going up there hitting 200 or lower. Right. And like you said, the runners in scoring position, it was abysmal to watch. The whole team, really. But yeah, I'm out at that price range. He was great for the team at the time. He was great for the city. He had a bunch of great big hits, but they weren't enough, in my opinion. Like the home run against Philly in the 8th inning, cool. We loved it, right? Tied the game up. The solo home run against the Yankees in 2023 to beat them in the 10th, I love it.
The grand slam against Houston.
Yeah, but we can count these on our hands, 2 hands over the course of his career. Like, but there's so many other times that we would lose count, like you said, second and third, and then he hit great with bases loaded, great, but runners at third, less than 2 outs, and we saw pop up or strike out or a weak ground ball, and they were game changing at bats, in my opinion. And he takes good routes. Defense is okay, like you said, takes great routes. He's one of the best route goers in all of baseball. People don't realize that. The arm is okay. It's middle of the pack. His jump rates were some of the worst in baseball. And it's just, I don't know. At that price, anything over $16 million, I'm out.
And again, with the caveat being, this guy is a 5 or 6 hitter. He's a 5 or 6 hitter.
Likely.
Yeah, when you have the middle of your order up, they need, in a big situation, they need to produce. And yeah, you're looking at a guy who hit 44 home runs. He drove in 102 this year. But this might be the best production year that he'll ever have. I don't think he's going to hit 44 home runs again. No. He's never driven in 100 before. And that batting average was the lowest that it's been in his entire career because he was selling out for the home runs, knowing that it's his walk year. He's a free agent. The guy sold out for home runs.
Yeah, and I mean, 24 of his 44 home runs were solos. I mean, that's why the RBIs were so low, because he hits a ton of solos.
Mm-hmm. I remember when Joe Carter signed here. Do you remember that? It was back in 1998.
Yeah, that was right around when I started paying attention.
Yeah, Joe Carter signed here. He was terrible, and he hit 11 home runs, and they were all solo home runs for the Orioles. And it was like, man, even when you hit home runs, they don't do anything for us because they're all solo shots.
Right.
Just a little thing that reminded me of. All right. Today's show brought to you by County Sports Zone. Find every score from every high school sporting event all year long at countysports.zone. Proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. I want to do a little bit of a rapid fire here with you, Zach. These are guys who I think are potentially roster crunches, on the roster bubble. And when I say that, some of them are free agents right now. Some of them are prospects who have gotten a cup of coffee and maybe they're not quite ready yet. And some of them are guys who have been here for a while and are they going to be here? So I'm gonna name say a name and you respond with either stays or goes. Just a rapid fire. All right. Jorge Mateo.
Goes.
Ramon Arias.
Stays.
Ryan O'Hearn.
Stays for now.
Ryan Mountcastle.
Stays for now.
James McCann.
Gone.
Kobe Mayo.
Starts in AAA.
Hesson Kjerstad.
Stays.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Mateo, I think he stays. Unless they trade him, because the only reason is I think that they love his elite defense. He proved he can play second base at an elite level. We already know what he can do at shortstop. He's got that speed and he can play outfield in a pinch. And I think that I think that's a valuable player on any team, as long as it doesn't. Every year he somehow finds himself in the regular playing time. As long as it doesn't turn into regular playing time, that's your super utility guy, in my opinion. Arias,
I talked
Brandon
about
Hyde
this the other
loves
day, and
Arias.
I asked some friends of mine, right? You have 4 guys that are fighting for one roster spot on this team right now. And Urias, Mateo, Rivera, who just got a contract, and Mayo.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do, right? So do you take the speed? Do you take the glove? Do you take Rivera's hitter? Or do you take the elite prospect? Like, 3 of those guys aren't going to be here, in my opinion. And I don't know who's going to be. Like, you would think Mateo probably stays, but is his 210, 212 average good enough compared to what Ramon Urias just put up last year? Like, that was one of our best hitters in the second half.
Yeah.
We know he's got a decent glove. It struggled a little bit last year, but then you've got Rivera, who also has playoff experience, and he hit the ball very well. He has a very good glove. Like, that's going to be a hard roster decision, in my opinion.
I think Ramon Arias is a prime trade candidate. I've been thinking for 2 or 3 years now. The guy's won a Gold Glove. He was the Orioles' best hitter in the second half last year after Westbrook got hurt. Had a couple of hits. One of the few guys to hit in the postseason. Would have had that big home run if not for the wall. I think Ramon Arias is a prime trade candidate. Holiday's playing second base every day. Westbrook's playing third base every day. They're not moving Gunnar off the shortstop. At first base, I hate the idea of a platoon at first base. I hate the idea of a platoon anywhere. I feel like you have enough talented players in your system that you can have somebody play every day at every position. And the Mountcastle O'Hearn thing, O'Hearn mashes righties and Mountcastle mashes lefties. But the thing is, neither one of them hit for power last year. I think they combined for 6 home runs in the second half. So what are we doing there?
And O'Hearn's not the greatest first baseman either. He's serviceable, but he's not Mountcastle's level.
Agreed. And like, I know that Kobe Mayo has a 70 grade arm, and you don't want to waste that arm at first base, but he's not going to play third for you. You don't seem to have any plans of moving into the outfield. He's got to have the inside track to first base as one of your top offensive prospects. You just saw what Colton Cowser could do with the bat at the big league level after struggling mightily in his first cup of coffee. Why would Kobe Mayo, who for all intents and purposes profiles as a better offensive prospect, why would he be any different? I think he's got to get that inside track. Mountcastle, he can play first, he can DH. You move that wall in, it's going to help him be a better hitter for you. So I think that he stays, but I can see Arias, I can see O'Hearn being trade candidates, even maybe Mayo or Kjerstad. I don't know what their line of thinking is, because you're seeing what I'm seeing. You have too many guys for one spot.
Right. And then it comes down to, like, when do you finally move on from just the average player? They have to make that decision. That's going to be the hardest part for them, is figuring out when to let go of who and when. Urias getting traded would be good. Wouldn't get much back from it, and I think that would kind of piss some fans off. But, I mean, it happens. But like you said, he's a good player, and he offers a lot for a lot of teams. It's just the thing with me with Mateo is everybody comments on his speed, but we don't run.
Yeah,
we don't run. We had Jackson Holliday, who is faster than Mateo. You had him on the bench in the playoffs, and he just sat there eating seeds. They don't run, so why would you keep him?
Right. Yeah, that's an excellent point, because I looked at it, because all you hear about is his speed. Well, one, you have to get on base. He doesn't bunt, and he has like a 260 career on base percentage. Doesn't get on base, and when he does, he had 2 stolen bases from June 1st on. Now, I know he got hurt, but that was 2 months later that he got hurt.
Yep.
If you're not going to utilize the speed, I 100% agree with you. I think this team needs to run more. I would love to see this team play small ball more. And I know that I'm old school in wanting small ball, but like, small ball helps you win. And you look at it, it rears ugly head in the postseason. James McCann bunts with runners on with Cedric Mullins after that leadoff double. James McCann bunts. He's on third base. Gunnar grounds out. Cedric scores. That's a different ballgame.
Yep.
And you have to be willing to do the little things to get the greater outcome, in my opinion. But I also know that baseball, analytically these days, they don't believe in bunting, and the Orioles are an analytically run ball club top to bottom.
Well, small ball is more than just bunting, and I think a lot of people kind of overlook that. Small ball is a guy on first and hitting a ground ball to the right side, moving him to second base, or a guy at second and hitting the ball to the right side. The Orioles don't do that much, but that is considered small ball, manufacturing runs and doing things. Yes, you're going to get yourself out, but I'll take you getting out, hitting a ball to the right side to move a guy from second to third with no outs over a strikeout any day of the week.
Yeah.
But
And
that's just
you're exactly right, and that was the big issue with Anthony Santander. We didn't need a grand slam there in the fifth
yeah.
inning of game two. You didn't need a grand slam. You needed a fly ball deep enough to get a run home. You
Mhm.
needed. I mean, I think the infield may have been in. I can't remember, but
I think they were halfway.
You needed to put a ball in play that wasn't a pop out or a ground ball right at the pitcher,
Yeah.
right? And he couldn't do that. A fly ball to medium depth left field scores you a run there, and he couldn't do
Mhm.
it. And that was a big issue with the Orioles as a team last year, and they need to get better at it. And I anticipate that if you and I are sitting here on November 11th, November 23rd, talking about it, Zach, Mike Elias knows this, and
Yeah.
he's going to make those efforts. Today's show, we're winding things down here. I want to remind you, it's brought to you by Project Game Day. Press Box's Project Game Day is back for another season. Join Glenn Clark, Rita Hubbard, and Super Bowl 35 champion Femi Ayanbadejo after every Ravens game this year as they break down what happened and why and what we learned in each game. You can find the show immediately following Ravens Chargers Monday at PressBoxOnline.com/game day. That's PressBox's Project Game Day, every Ravens game day all season long. I have such a hard time saying Femi Ayanbadejo because I've always called him Ayanbadejo, but I
Same.
heard him on the radio and he calls himself Ayanbadejo. So I assume that's how his name is pronounced. It just sounds weird to me.
I applaud you for even trying.
Yeah, I got the reads here. I got to say something, right? So, okay. We've already talked a lot about what the Orioles should be or could be doing in this offseason. And as we wind things down today, Zach, if you had your druthers and it was up to Zach Moore, what the Orioles do at the winter meetings this offseason to revamp this ball club and make a strong push towards their first World Series berth in 42 years, what is the ideal offseason for the Baltimore Orioles in your eyes?
Ideal would probably be Teoscar Hernandez. That would be my hitting splash. If I can't go with that, I would take probably Randall Grichuk. And then maybe look for a low end trade for just a backup outfielder, better than Austin Hayes and better than Austin Slater.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on what they do there. I would love to run at one of the top end arms. I would throw all my money at Max Fried if I can. If not, then I'm going to start looking at, like I said, Scherzer and some of the smaller guys, Eovaldi and stuff. It's definitely going to need at least two arms. I'm going to go heavy on the bullpen. I'm going to start at Tanner Scott. And my ideal bullpen would be Tanner Scott, Mike Soroka, and Clay Holmes. Now you are solidified from the fifth inning on, and you've got matchups you can move around. You've got two closers that can throw 100 miles an hour depending on who's coming up that inning. That would make Brandon Hyde very happy. We know that. I would attack the bullpen over everything else first. I mean, we watched the Dodgers basically just win a World Series primarily just using the bullpen. If you go get one good starter, I think you're good there. But the bullpen is number one priority in my opinion. Mike Soroka is going to give you a lot of really, really good quality innings in that 6th and 7th role. His numbers when he moved to the pen for the White Sox last year were incredible, and they were vastly overlooked. We saw it when Kopech left the White Sox. He was really good. I think you're going to see the same thing out of Soroka, and he was a really good starting pitcher in Atlanta prior to getting hurt. So you know what you're getting there. Clay Holmes, when I looked at his numbers, they were downright awful with 0 days rest, and they were really great with 1 and 2 days rest, which is what a 7th and 8th guy would get. 1 to 2 days rest all the time. So really attacking certain guys in the pen, especially with how much we use our pen, and we only seem to use them for 1 inning. Like, why wouldn't you stack it where you had 5 dominant guys in a row from 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th inning? And then you have room if guys go deep into the game 6 and 7. Now you get a couple really good guys on a couple days off. Felix gets a little bit of a break. I would put most of my effort into the bullpen to start off.
Yeah, and I think that if you're reading tea leaves, right, and you see them getting rid of Jacob Webb and Danny Coulombe, and Matt Bowman threw a lot of innings for the Orioles down the stretch out of the bullpen, and you have an owner who's basically mandating to your GM, go spend money this offseason. it kind of lines up with adding to that bullpen. Now, I can't disagree with you on Soroka or Clay Holmes. Tanner Scott, I always love Tanner Scott. The stuff is filthy. What scares me, 2023, he had like a 2.1 walks per nine rate, and it jumped back up to about 6.5 in 2024. And so a guy like that coming out of your bullpen, because you already have a guy like that with CNL Perez. So those two guys, they both throw hard from the left side. They have nasty stuff, but a little bit wild. You want two of those guys in the back end of your bullpen. Now, look, Tanner Scott was an all-star this year. He's one of the best relievers on the market, but a guy that walks somebody that walks guys that much, that scares me. I do look at, for me, it's Teoscar Hernandez, Max Fried, Nathan Eovaldi, at least two of those three relievers that you talked about. And I'm like, all right, boys, let's go. Let's get this season going.
I'm going to share something real quick. This is a guy that it would be really hard to go get, but I'm going to try and call the Twins and get this guy. I don't know if you can see this here, or can you bring that in?
Yeah, I'm going to hit show on stream.
He's controlled through 2028 too. And he's only getting better every year. It would take a good prospect, probably like a Creed Willems, to get this guy, but that's a guy that I'm calling Minnesota for and finding out how I can get him, because he got electric stuff in the bullpen.
That is a lot of red in his percentile rankings. And if you look at his numbers each year, he's gotten better and better and better. Yep. This looks like a guy who, but here's a question that I got for you, Zach. Why would the Twins be willing to give them up? The Twins look to be an up-and-coming team. They look to be, a team that would want to hold on to a guy like that rather than get rid of him. Why would they be willing to trade him?
Well, they need hitting. They do well pitching wise. They struggle with hitting, and now they're losing Santana potentially. Why wouldn't you go ask for a good end prospect? And we've got plenty of them that can hit. Mm-hmm. I would try. It would be hard, like I said, because he is controlled through 2028. You don't really want to wait that long, because now at that point he's 32, 33. But try to go get somebody in their prime. Somebody like that. Doesn't have to be this exact guy, but somebody like that who's got a couple years control in their prime and shows really good stuff in the bullpen.
Yeah, Jim Bowden seems to think that the Orioles should go out and trade for Mason Miller. I don't know that they have the prospects in the system anymore to do that, and they're going to keep him as a reliever, going to convert him back to a starter. If you're going to go out and you're going to make a trade for a reliever, and it's a guy like what was his name again? I'm sorry.
Griffin Jacks.
Griffin Jacks. If you're going to go out and you're going to trade for a guy like Griffin Jacks, and he can come help your ball club immediately and for the foreseeable future, why not? It's just like we know it takes two to tango. So if the Twins are willing to do it, it's just what are they willing to accept from you to do it?
Right.
So I saw you post that the other day, and I thought it was a fantastic idea, assuming the Twins would be willing to play ball. Two more quick questions for it. It absolutely would be, and you might have to give up a lot. It's what's the asking price?
Right.
Two more quick questions, and then we'll get to some viewer interaction, and then we'll get out of here. All right. Are you good on time?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Cedric Mullins, $8.7 million in arbitration. It's his last year of arbitration. He's becoming a free agent at the end of the year. Are the Orioles offering him $8.7 million? Do you think it's a wise decision? He was really good from June on, but too many cold streaks, in my opinion, to be able to, and especially at the beginning. You know what? Let me take a step back. Let me rephrase that. He had a lot of cold streaks this year. The start of the season, he was dreadful. He and Austin Hayes and Anthony Santander were absolutely dreadful. He doesn't get on base at the clip that he used to. The power is still there, but not the 30-30 power. He's still going to steal you 30 bags a year and play elite defense. But I also look at him as somebody who, anytime there's a runner on second base and there's a base hit to center field, that person's going to score every time, because the arm's too weak. So is Cedric Mullins worth the $8.7 million this year? And then the second question is a follow-up to it. How close is Enrique Bradfield?
What I want to know is what did Mullins do to enhance from a 6.3 arbitration to an 8.7 last year?
Right.
Like it's the 6 around a 6.5, a 6.8. Sure, give it to him. Like, I don't think he did anything spectacular last year for a $2 million jump. I understand inflation and stuff, but they're going to take that to court and they're going to try and get that lower. It's not often that you beat a player and go lower, but he's not worth 8-7. Not after what he did last year. Now, he did well in the playoffs, don't get me wrong, but it's not worth almost $9 million. The jump wasn't enough for almost a $3 million increase, in my opinion. The Bradfield's close. He's very, very close. We're going to see him in AAA this year, and I think if he gets off to a hot start, you could look at him potentially coming up in the second half maybe. It all depends on what Mullins does. If Mullins continues to carry on what he did in September and October, and he brings that into next year, he's going to finish out his contract and he'll probably walk in free agency. Yeah. But it just depends. Now, if he comes back and he's hitting 210 again through the whole first half and, 6-7 home runs, I think they're going to look in a different direction a little quicker than most people are ready for.
Yeah, I don't think that he can afford to start the year the way he did in 24. I don't think he can afford to do that. I mean, you're talking about a guy who he hit about 280 from June 1st, from the middle of June on last year. He still stole 30 bags. He still hit 15 home runs. So the pop's there. The defense is there. His defensive range metrics have gone down since 2021. So, he's still very good. But also, he's not as fast as people think. He gets great jumps on balls. He gets the balls, and he steals a lot of bags because he's a good base runner. But he's in like the 69th percentile for sprint speed. Like Mateo, Holiday, Bradfield, far faster than
Westberg is too.
Westberg is too. Westberg has elite sprint speed.
Actually, I think when I last look at it, Mullins and Kjerstad were, when they look at the sprint speed per foot or whatever, Kjerstad was like a couple inches behind Mullins. It wasn't far. It wasn't a whole foot. Like you're looking at Kjerstad and Mullins being around the same speed now. Now, when you watch those two in the outfit, it looks completely different. But on a deadline sprint, they're saying that they're comparable in speed now. Yeah. I don't know if that's good or bad.
I mean, good for Kjerstad, bad for Mullins.
That's how I was looking at it.
And so for me, and look, I love Cedric Mullins. A lot of these players, I feel like there's a misconception that me being critical of a player means I'm being negative or that I don't like the player. I love all these players. There's like a handful of players in Orioles history who I absolutely hate. I love all these players. I just know that like what they're doing, what some of these players are doing, it's not good enough to win a World Series. Right. And like I said, 15 winning seasons in my 40 years of life, no World Series appearances, 3 ALCS appearances, and you lost in convincing fashion in all 3 of them. I look at that and I say, I don't want somebody who's a feel-good story that the fans love, who's just good enough. Yep. I want somebody who puts you over the top. And this Orioles roster and the money that they have to spend, they have the ability to have players like that at just about every position. I want guys who are going to go out there and be the best team in baseball and win a World Series. Because guess what? The Dodgers are never going to stop reloading. The Yankees are never going to stop spending money. You take a team full of, no offense, Colton Cowsers and Cedric Mullins, you can't compete with those teams that can spend. So get the best players at every position. And that's always been my standpoint. I don't just want to win some games. I want to win a championship.
Yep.
And that's how you do it, in my opinion.
100%. I'm with you on that. I mean, people look at it as negative, but sometimes you see a bigger picture than what is going on right now. Like you said, Tony was really good for the city. Cedric has been really good for the city. But when you've watched these guys several times now, outside of Mullins last year, not get it done when it matters, it's fair to question, can you upgrade? And it's fair to want a little bit and expect a little bit more, especially when you have a good roster.
Yeah, and you look at upgrading. Upgrading doesn't always mean, you need to upgrade your rotation by spending on a top-of-the-market free agent pitcher. You need to upgrade from the right side of the plate with somebody that can hit for power and get on base and play outfield and DH a little bit. Mm-hmm. But when you look at replacing Cedric Mullins and Anthony Santander and Ryan Mountcastle and Randall Hearn, you can upgrade from within. You have guys who are younger, cheaper, and frankly better in your system. And just because they come up, and one of the most irritating things for me when it comes to Brandon Hyde is that you have a top prospect, he comes up and maybe gets a couple hits in his first game or in the first couple of games. And then it's a game where he goes 0 for 4 or 0 for 5 with 3 strikeouts, and his ass is glued to the bench for a week plus. And these guys aren't going to get better by sitting on the bench. If you're bringing them up, they got to play. And you're not going to convince me that Kobe Mayo and Heston Kjerstad cannot hit 250, 260 with 20-plus home runs through over the course of a big league season if you give them ample playing time. And ample playing time, give it to them in April. Games matter in April as much as they do in September. But I'm not asking you to call Kobe Mayo up in August and have him play meaningful games for you down the stretch and struggle like that. Let him struggle early so that when he's really coming into his own, it's when he's helping the team the most.
Right.
To me, this isn't rocket science. To me, this is like simple roster and player development. And that's what I want to see from this team. And that's what I think that maybe they'll start leaning towards because they know that what happened last year, especially from June on, was not acceptable. And when it comes down to it, yeah, you had a lot of injuries. They were all on the pitching side. The offense had no excuse to fall apart the way that they did.
That was ugly.
Yeah, it was nasty. And I'm excited to see Adley come into camp in better shape. I'm excited to see Gunnar and Colton take those next steps forward and see what they do to revamp this roster. I think everybody else is. So Zach, at the end of these shows, what we do is we do a little bit of viewer interaction before we get out of here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So Joe Radke says, no YouTube today. It says that we're streaming on YouTube, so maybe it was a slower start. But if there's no YouTube comment, again, that there still wasn't any YouTube, and I'll talk with the people, the powers that be at Pressbox and see what the deal is there. But it says that we're streaming live.
No, I think he was looking at mine.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Daniel Pitts. Paul, I remember like the day before the Orioles announced the wall change, you were making a comment on X about whether Bregman would consider the Orioles with Walltimore. I think that was with you, Zach.
Yep.
Kind of going back and forth a little bit about that. And then I noticed that like literally the next day they said, we're moving the wall in. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact, Zach, that they cannot get right-handed hitters to agree to sign here with the wall as it currently stands. And that's why they're not saying we're moving it in over time. They're moving it in time for opening day. And I think that it's to attract more right-handed hitters.
I was actually listening to Glenn's show the other day with Anthony Sanders, and he made a lot of comments about the current players talking about the wall. And he's like, I can't comment on the things they said because I'd get in trouble. But it didn't seem like anybody liked it on the roster either. Yeah.
Mountcastle has clearly hated it. Trey Mancini, when it first got put up, he was very outspoken about how much he hated that.
Yeah.
So I think that they finally started listening to people, and they're like, how do we make this team better? One of the ways is doing this.
Yep.
Joe Radke, let's be honest. So the state just gave the team $600 million for renovations. Who actually paying for the wall this time? Well, yeah, the taxpayers are paying for it because. But those, I don't know that those $600 million, they don't have access to that money yet.
They don't have I think it's 26.
I think 2026 is when they get the majority of that money. So a lot of the small renovations, I think the Orioles are paying for themselves.
Yeah.
So with regards to the wall, it really is the Orioles. And I think because the Ravens got immediate access to those funds, but I think it's because they signed pretty immediately. I think that they were stipulations for when you sign. Daniel Pitts. I saw Elias made a comment about being very active in free agency so far. I'm assuming he means he's been talking to a lot to free agents and their agents. I feel like this fan base will lose their minds if we don't sign two or at the very least one top free agent.
Fair.
Zach, I'll let you go first on this one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think expectations are very high this year, and I think the fan base is actually paying attention now that we've had 2 straight winning seasons, where before you could probably get away not doing a whole lot prior to the winter meetings, and we kind of knew that we would never sign some top guys, but now you've been really vocal that like, oh, hey, we're talking to this guy, and you've got all these analysts saying, oh, the Orioles are involved, and the Orioles are this, and the Orioles are that. Like, now it's time to put up or shut up. Like, you can't say you're going to do it and then not go out and do it. You can't say we're ready for liftoff and now you've got access to some money and then you don't do it. So they like I said, you better put up or shut up. It's time.
Yeah. I think, I said right after the season ended, I was like, look, the Orioles, they have an owner that's willing to spend money. They're going to be linked to every top free agent, just about every top free agent that's going to be out there. You're going to hear them linked a lot. And Jim Bowden puts out his top 50 free agents, and he linked the Orioles to like 15 or 16 of them. All right, it's going to happen. I think that they're going to spend money. And when you have an owner, like Mike Elias said lift off, and then did a lot of backtracking after the 2022 season because lift off in his mind and lift off in our minds, he was also working with an owner that was handcuffing him a little bit,
Yeah.
not letting him spend that kind of money. So like maybe he had an idea of liftoff, and the owner was like, I'm not spending that money.
Yeah.
We don't really know. Now he doesn't have to say liftoff because he's got an owner who's come out and said, I didn't buy a team at this age to not win. We're going to speed up the process to win a World Series here and bring championships back to Baltimore. There's a mandate from David Rubenstein to Mike Elias: spend and spend well. I really do believe that you're going to see the Orioles be major players. Soto, no, but a lot of the other guys, they're going to be major players.
I read a rumor, and I don't know if it's 100% true, so don't quote me on it, but Major League Baseball might be putting a stipulation on the Orioles to spend X amount of dollars this offseason because they've only spent $55 million over the last couple seasons or something like that overall. Again, I don't know if that's 100% true, but that would be pretty interesting because the article basically said that it would take away from their the revenue shares that they get from the bigger end teams. So basically, they think the Orioles are just taking that money and keeping it, which they probably were for a while.
Yeah.
So I could see them saying like, "Hey, you got to spend this little bit to keep getting that funds. If not, we're going to cut that off for a year or two."
Yeah, and I wonder. I'm not privy to what goes into. I know that has a lot to do with market size, but I don't know if there's something also in there about like how much ownership is worth. I mean, the Orioles' three main owners are worth combined over 114 billion dollars, and so like that ownership group has a ton of money. There's no excuse not to spend now. The prospects are here. You've been winning baseball games. Go spend some damn money. Sorry, I missed a few. Daniel Pitts, I was kind of surprised the team didn't protect Alex Pham. I think he's going to be pretty good. I wouldn't be shocked to see him selected in the Rule 5. He was really good at high A, and then he was pretty good at double A. Did he get bumped up to triple A last year and struggle a little bit? I feel like I remembered that.
I think at the very end, he made just a couple starts. I can't 100% remember. I didn't keep too much tabs on him towards the end of the year. Middle of the year, I did, but I could see him getting selected. He's a guy you hope stays, but I mean, again, it comes back to the point where you just have too many guys.
Right. I think you look at somebody like, keep in mind, just because these guys aren't protected and they could be taken in the Rule 5 draft, and even if they are taken in the Rule 5 draft, and I'm looking at Pham, he spent the entire 2024 season at double A. He went 7-4 with 4.24 ERA. Gave up 14 home runs, 138 strikeouts in 119 innings, and 50 walks, 3.8 walks per nine. That number could be better. It was the year before when he was at high A and double A where he had a sub-3 ERA in both spots. He was really good. Just because they get selected doesn't mean that they're staying, because they have to stay on that roster the entire season. So even if he gets selected, there's a good chance that a guy like Alex Pham, I keep trying not to call him Tommy, a guy like Alex Pham is returned to the Orioles at some point in the 2025 season. A guy like, what was Zach Pop? That was a guy who, when he got selected by the Marlins, because of their situation and because of the talent that he had in that arm, you knew he was never coming back here. And that one sucked. I really, really was upset they didn't protect him. Joe said, elbow room to move pitchers up to double A, pun intended. He was probably playing on something that we said there.
Yeah.
Daniel Pitts, did you see that Austin Slater said the White Sox told him that he was a top priority to them in free agency? That it can be true. And we talked about this in the show a little bit earlier. It can be true because they're probably trying to get to secure a number 1 overall pick by being the worst team in baseball again next year. Because there's no way that a guy like Austin Slater is a top priority for any team. And I'm not trying to hate on the guy. It just is what it is. He's just not. He's a replacement level player.
Oh yeah, if that.
Yeah. You'll see that a lot of the guys that comment on these shows are a lot of the same guys. Daniel also says, I don't understand the Coulombe decision. It has to be an injury they don't like, but I have a feeling he's going to come back to haunt us. Webb, I'm okay with letting go. I think we can find someone better than him. And again, Zach, you pointed this out. It has to be the idea that they're reloading with pitchers that are that much better. Because otherwise, Coulombe at that number, 4.4 million for a back end reliever that throws, it's a lefty in an unkind ballpark to right-handed hitters. It doesn't make sense to not pick that up unless your plans are to replace him with somebody that much better.
I think when I looked at it though, his market value I think was only in the 2s when I last looked at it. So
I saw something about his peripherals that were pretty low too.
Yeah. I'm trying to find it real quick, but I don't. Let's see down here in the D's. Danny, Coulombe. Let's see, market value. Yeah, market value 2.3. So maybe that played into it. Maybe they try to get him around 3 million and save 1.4, which I'd be completely fine with.
Mm-hmm. And look, and they might be doing him a solid. Like, hey, look, your market value is this 4.4. It's a little higher than we're willing to go. So we're gonna not pick up your option. Test the market. If you can get that or more someplace else, by all means, go and do it. If not, go back. This is the number we're comfortable giving you.
Yeah.
You know,
and
it
that's fair to the player.
Yeah, it's doing a solid for him, and I can 100% see it being. Especially now, I would have never guessed his market value was only 2.3 million. You're talking about basically half of what he was projected to get from what he was going to get from that option. I think they probably just did more of a solid than we realize. Joe says, Tanner Scott, please. The walks scare the shit out of me, man. Pardon my language, but the walks really scare me. But he was dominant, and he's been dominant for 2 years now. And he didn't get he was as dominant after the trade to a good baseball team. So if they sign him, you're not going to see me cry about it.
Yeah, when I seen him put down Ohtani like that in the playoffs, I was just like, okay.
Yeah, and Ohtani didn't look good, like at all. Joe says awards should be voted on by players and fans, not writers. Yeah, those writers.
They're going to vote for their team, right? And then it's like a guy from Boston isn't going to vote for a Yankees player, whether he's the main guy or not. And like Yankees are never going to vote. It's so dumb. Like they have standards they have to follow from their publications and whatnot. Like leave it to the players. The players should be the number one. Players and coaches, in my opinion, or even GMs. Let somebody more involved in the game do it rather than somebody who's held to a standard by a publication.
Yeah, and a lot of these Baseball Writers Association of America is filled with guys who are like super old school and super set in their ways. And that's why you see a lot of guys who probably should be in the Hall of Fame not get in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Because, look, if you say somebody's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, but they're a Hall of Famer, they're a Hall of Famer. Why aren't they a first ballot Hall of Famer? These guys hold grudges and they vote for their teams. And I 100% agree with you that the voting process for these awards and for the Hall of Fame is quite antiquated and something needs to be done about it. Daniel Pitts, I think we all knew that the Yankee bias would prevent Cowser from winning Rookie of the Year. I hoped it wouldn't. And then, look, like Cowser had a great season, and until Zach actually corrected me a couple of weeks ago, I thought that finishing top 2 got you that extra draft pick, and it doesn't. I wanted him to win just for that extra draft pick, especially since the Orioles traded away the one that they got from Gunnar winning in that Corbin Burns deal. I wanted to recoup that somehow. So,
and he didn't even win it.
Didn't win, but
Heel didn't even win it.
What do you mean?
They said because he wasn't considered a top 100 prospect, he doesn't win the award. So they don't get a first round pick. Only Austin Wells for them would have got them the first round pick.
That's
so no
crazy.
one in the AL gets it.
There's so much I didn't know about that. You know, it's only if you finish top 2 for MVP and Cy Young voting as a rookie. Could AJ Minter, Adit says, could AJ Minter be a target, especially given that Drew French probably knows him in his Atlanta days? You talked about
100%.
this. Yeah.
100%.
It could definitely be a target for the Orioles. Daniel, you'd think Cowser is working every day in the offseason on hitting off-speed pitches. If he comes in the spring and doesn't show much improvement with the off-speed pitches, it would be incredibly disappointing. There's part of that made me feel like Colton Cowser was an ideal trade candidate because you could trade super high on him right now because we saw how much he struggled with off-speed pitches. I think that it is absolutely a top priority for him and the Orioles to get him to be able to hit whatever's being thrown at him because he broke his hand in that playoff game on strike 3 because he can't hit off-speed pitches. Now, to his credit, the pitch that was thrown, I think it was a slider. I think that the arm slot and the pitch location for a slider and the fastball were in the exact same spot, and he was trying to get out in front of it. And it fooled him.
Those happen. They just, it happen. You see guys take swings and they get hit in the groin and stuff like it. It happens. Like people don't realize how much the ball moves in the big leagues. You're looking 18 to 20 inches. So when your mind says swing and that ball starts running, you get hit sometimes. I mean, it happens in the big leagues. It's unfortunate that it happened in that moment, but
Yeah, with the bases loaded in the playoffs under the brightest lights,
Yeah.
In a situation where your team can't score. I think that every player like Gunnar is 100% going to focus on being able to show up in big situations, and Adley's going to focus on staying in shape and not having that dramatic fall off. Cal's going to work on hitting off speed pitches. They all have something to work on that's a glaring need, and they're going to do it. And we see it with Gunnar alone. He needed to cut down the strikeouts and walk more to be an everyday player at the big league level, and that's exactly what he did.
Yep.
Joe says, "What's up, Adit? Happy Saturday." I guess you guys know each other. That's cool. Daniel Pitts, Calzi seems to have the most power of any current Oriole. If he could just make more contact, he'd be right up there with the league leaders in home runs. He has crazy power. He does.
He does.
Him and Gunnar, the way that the ball comes off their bat is different.
They got a lot of bat speed.
Yeah. Daniel Pitts, I think the Orioles' target should be Fried or Snell and Teoscar Hernandez. That would be an incredibly successful offseason for them.
I wouldn't stop there, though. I wouldn't stop there. You can't just sign two of those guys and then not address the bullpen, especially if you're getting rid of some guys. I mean, one of those three guys would be successful, in my opinion, as long as you still loaded up the bullpen, too.
Yeah. Adit says, "Are you concerned about Fried's elbow holding up over a long term?" Dude, I am concerned about anybody's elbow holding up over a long term deal. You had 3-4 pitchers that needed elbow surgery this year. Danny Coulombe had to have bone spurs removed from his. You had a lot of pitchers on the IL this year with shoulder inflammation, elbow surgery, all sorts of stuff. I'm concerned about every pitcher that ever throws for the Orioles and their elbow holding up. I'm concerned about Grayson.
Anybody, literally anybody in baseball, you have to be concerned about at this point, and then long term too. It's just until they figure out what is going on, it's expected to happen.
Yeah, it's like you said at the beginning, inevitable is the word for it. It's going to happen.
Yep.
I just saw Daniel says, "I just saw a stat that since 2020, the Orioles are in last place for amount of money spent on free agents. Will need to change this." You just alluded to that. There was that article. And you said, "Don't quote you on this, we won't." But the article saying, baseball is saying, you got to spend more money or you don't get to be part of this anymore as far as revenue sharing. I haven't seen that yet. I don't want to say that that's in stone, but it sounds like something that could be accurate because they just aren't spending. And I believe that they will. I think that payroll could double or maybe even triple this year.
Yeah, we spent 57. I want to say the Yankees and Dodgers have spent like 1.6 billion.
I mean, Texas spent $1 billion over the course of 2 seasons.
Right.
And in the last four seasons, they've spent not even $60 million. That's crazy. Adit, is there a legal reason the Rays couldn't play in Oakland while the stadium is getting rebuilt? Is Oakland Stadium destroyed already? Well, I mean, I don't know what the legal. I don't think it's good for business for anybody to take a team out of its market and move it 3,000 miles away. And I don't know. You call them the Oakland Rays, the Tampa Bay Rays of Oakland.
Right.
There's definitely. I don't know the rules off the top of my head, but there's definitely rules for why they can't do that. But I mean, the Blue Jays played in.
Well, they're also an AL East team. You don't want to put them on the West Coast either because you got to play multiple times on the West Coast, which you shouldn't have either. So keeping them in Florida is probably the most ideal thing for everybody that's in the AL East.
Yeah, the idea that they proposed a couple of years ago, splitting games between Montreal and Tampa Bay, that just made no sense to me.
No.
If you want a team in Montreal, just put a team in Montreal.
Yeah.
You didn't have to put a baseball team in Vegas. Didn't have to do it. John Price, morning O's talk for my morning. Love it. Happy to provide it, man. Well, we both love talking baseball. I didn't mean to keep us here for 2 hours, but a lot to talk about, and it's what we do,
Yep.
John also says, I mean, Mountie will be gone too. He hates Camden Yards. Maybe less now.
Yeah, maybe less.
Yeah.
I think he loves the city and he loves his friends, though.
Yeah. If they had never moved the wall, I don't think you would have ever seen an unhappy Ryan Mountcastle. And he probably would have been a guy hitting 30 home runs every year. I think that wall was definitely in his head. MLB Trade Rumors predicts a 3-year, $60 million contract for Teoscar Hernandez. The guy struck out 188 times this year, but he hit over 270. He hit over 30 homers. He drove in close to 100. Ohtani struck out 170 times this year. You know what I mean? So I'm not too worried about the strikeouts, but I think that maybe that's why a guy like Teoscar Hernandez, and he's on the wrong side of 30. maybe that's why he's not projected to make more money, because everything that he's done at the big league level, with the Blue Jays, he was one of their best hitters.
Yep.
And he seems to be a team leader wherever he goes. 3 for $60 seems light to me.
Yeah, I would overpay. I mean, not overpay, but if you went up to 3 for $70, if that gets a deal done before he talks to anybody else, just go get it done. Like,
yeah,
I'm sorry, it's
absolutely.
what, 2.5 million a year or something like that, or 3 million a year. Like, just do it.
You can't go into next season with the same offense. You
Right.
have to have somebody that gets on base and hits for power from the right side.
Yeah.
Daniel also says we don't need Arias or Mateo on this team. If Mateo is utilized correctly, I think every team needs a Jorge Mateo. And Arias proved why they needed him last year. The hope is that something fluky like Jordan Westbrook getting hit on the hand by a pitch at the end of July doesn't happen.
Yep.
Because, look, all of us got upset when Arias would be in the starting lineup. We would get upset, and then he was your best hitter in August and into September. There's spots for those guys. They're big league players. All right. Mateo stays solely for his speed if they utilize him correctly.
Right. If you're just going to keep a guy on the bench for his speed and then not use him, like, you're just wasting a roster spot.
Exactly. Jammer Daniels, Mateo stays. He has the best glove on the team. Elias pretty much said Mateo is healing well and will be ready for spring training. Well, what's he supposed to say? They're going to extend him a contract. And even if he's planning on trading him, he's not going to talk about him under any stipulations other than he's going to be part of their plans moving forward.
Yep.
They're going to say that about anybody that's on the team. A couple comments left. Daniel says, I think Mountcastle gets traded before opening day for a serviceable reliever, and Mayo platoons with O'Hearn at first base to start the season.
I think more mid-season. If it happens, it would be more mid-season. I don't think Mayo hasn't done anything to prove that he's ready to roll. Now, he could have a great spring training, sure, but you still want to see him get a lot more reps at first base every single day. And I've heard rumors about right field too, so I would just nix third base, find a good spot for him. He's going to start in AAA, and he needs to learn that spot.
He absolutely does. He's got to learn whatever spot it is, like you said, whether it's right field or first base. He's got to learn how to play it at a level where it's acceptable for what he provides to you offensively. And then offensively, he's got nothing left to prove at AAA, but he's got to prove it at the big league level, and that's where until he finds a position he can play every day, he's not going to get that opportunity. Mountcastle, I think they're going to keep Mountcastle. I thought all offseason they were going to trade him, but moving that Wall back in, I think they're going to keep him and see if he can really refine his power numbers. And if he can't, if you're still seeing 13 home runs in mid-July, then they're probably thinking about trading him at the deadline. But I think that he stays for now. I can 100% see O'Hearn being gone because his last 2 months, he did not hit. He just didn't hit. And I can see O'Hearn being.
And he's making a good penny, right? What is it? Over 6, right?
$8 million.
8, yeah.
What was his number? If I can scroll back up.
It's either 6.5 or 7.5 or something.
I think it was like 7.7 million was his.
Yeah, that's a lot of money for a part-time player.
Part-time player who struggled down the stretch and has more bad seasons than good. And look, when he was really good last year, he was really good. He was awesome. But Pitt says this is Mullins' last year with the O's. I think he'll either be traded at the trade deadline or allowed to walk after the season. I think we can all agree there's not an extension with the Baltimore Orioles in Mullins' future. Just like when Hayes
unless
came
he comes out and
year,
hits like 270.
Yeah. And like Hayes came out after arbitration last year, and after his arbitration here, he said it went really well, and he was like, I want to sign a long-term extension to stay in Baltimore. And I felt so bad for him because as soon as he said that, I'm like, that's not going to happen. You're not going to be here after 2025. And he wasn't even here to finish 2024. And I think it's the same thing with Mullins. Mullins would have to have, in my opinion, a 2030 season, like you said, hit about 270 for the Orioles to consider keeping him, because I think they really believe in Enrique Bradfield. And Bradfield, like, he's not going to hit for the same power, but he'll hit for better average than people think because I thought that you looked a little different. I thought you looked a little different.
Did you hear this? Did you read my Facebook? I don't know if we're friends on Facebook. So I shaved this last night.
Might be.
Mm-hmm. I shaved it last night, right? And I asked my daughter, I was like, hey, do you like, me clean shaven? And she said, no, I liked your hair. You don't look like a daddy anymore. You look like a weird mommy. And I was like, I'm never shaving again. Man. That's awesome. So
Here, you look like a weird mommy.
a weird mommy from a 4-year-old.
Oh my gosh, my daughter is 10 months old, and God bless her, she has pink eye right now. That poor little kid.
Yeah.
She's never seen me without a beard, and she loves my beard. And she like will tug
Always
on me.
pull on it. Yeah.
The only time I shave my beard is when it's by accident, where like I go to trim it and I accidentally get
Nick
too
it.
close and
Yeah.
I nick it, and then I'm like, oh God, I gotta shave the whole thing off. My wife doesn't like me, but I mean,
It was all gray right here, and I was like, I gotta get it out of there.
See, I've got a few that it's vain, but I plucked a few because there's only like
Yeah.
3 or 4. When it goes fully gray, I'm gonna embrace it, but I can't have like just a big splotch of gray and then the rest brown. Maybe I'll shave
I
it.
was getting there, and then when I shaved it, it comes back brown for a while, and then I have 3 kids, so it goes gray pretty quick. But
It looks so natural, no one can tell it's just for men gel. It's a
Yep.
product for a reason, right? Just to finish my point about the whole Mullins thing, with Enrique Bradfield, I think he'll hit for better average than people think, because there's going to be a lot of ground balls to the left side that he's going to beat out, and he's going to utilize that bunt. And they're really telling him, like, look, don't focus on power. Focus on your spray chart. Focus on hitting line drives, keeping the ball on the ground, and using your speed. Because Enrique Bradfield, and even to a lesser extent, just because he's newer to the organization, because he and Vance Honeycutt exist, I think that Cedric Mullins is gone, if not by midseason, definitely by the end of the year. He will not be an Oriole after 2020.
Oh, we've got a lot of center fielders, and I don't think people realize it. You got Josenberger, who can play center. O'Verne, that they drafted, is going to be very good. Nate George was a 6th-round pick. He might be faster than Bradfield. He's going to be really good. There's a lot of good outfielders in the next 3 years. There's no way Mullins stays. Yeah, there's just too many guys at that point. You just got to kind of, unless you plan on trading all those guys, which I don't think they do. They're gonna take their leap of faith here with the guys that they picked.
And you know what? Maybe that means that Mullins goes out and he has another 2021 campaign because he knows he's heading into free agency and he can get a bag. Because look, it's the only extension, it's the only contract he's going to get in his career, because he's what, 30 now?
Yep.
He's 30 years old. The numbers have been in decline. He really showed out the second half, and especially in the playoffs. If he has a good 2025, somebody's going to pay him. It's his only opportunity to get that contract. So I think he could ball out this year. Zach, anything else? What do you want to plug before we get out of here?
No, I'm good. I appreciate you bringing me on.
Yeah, man, it was great. Awesome baseball talk with you, man. Thank you so much. Thank you for withstanding the longest show of this iteration of the show, well over 2 hours. It's only supposed to be an hour show, but there's nothing on after us. So thank you for taking part. Thank you to everybody that tuned in. All of our sponsors, without you, we don't have a show. Without our viewers, listeners, our loyal fans, we 100% do not have a show. Until next